Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I want to say cheers to everybody out there. Happy Mother's Day, and I'll pass it first over to Spartan Grown.
Thanks, Jack. I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces, or you could shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com or russ@gmlarmy.com, and I can answer all your lighting or cannabis growing questions.
Happy to have you back. I'm having some technical difficulties on my side, but at least on my phone, I'm seeing that we're live. So I'm going to pass it over next to Matthew Gates.
I see that we're being live as well. Yeah. Is it me?
Yes, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Matthew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I'm excited to talk about this kind of topic. If you got any pest questions or things, put them in the chat. And look out, find me on Sentinel on YouTube. I'll have some videos about budworms coming up. I'm very excited to talk about my opinions about this potential huge problem as things go, and what we can do as a community to solve that problem.
Always good when there's problems that we have solutions and ways to implement it as a community together. Knowledge is power for sure, and we're always happy to have you here for IPM and all other topics. And last and certainly not least of the panelists who is with us this evening is the American one.
Hello, Jack panel and everyone in chat. I am the American one on YouTube and the American one underscore with underscore 18s over on the IG. Most of you know where to find me, and it's always good to be here. Looking forward to it. And happy Mother's Day to all the moms and all the moms of plants too.
Absolutely. And I want to say happy birthday or belated birthday to Smot Poker. And it was just their birthday recently. And they're awesome. We got Crispy Wannabe in the chat right now. Probably going to have Smot Poker in there if he's not already as well. Great people, as always. And I also want to shout out the High on Homegrown gang. I just did a little recording with them. It's not live yet. They'll put it out at some point. But Mackie and Monkey over at High on Homegrown and the whole Percy's Grow Room gang over there, really good people. It's cool to check back in with them. It's been a couple years since I jumped on their podcast, so I was happy to hang out with them for a little over an hour before they got to go and try and see the little I don't know, Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights or whatever the hell it is, the solar injections that have happened over these past few weeks where people are somewhat seeing some pinkish, greenish things in the sky. So cool stuff at night. But with that said, Brandon Rust has just joined us as well. So Brandon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. What's going on, everybody? Glad to be back. It's been a couple of weeks since I was on. Got a lot of stuff going on. If you're not familiar with me, you can find me on Instagram at rust.brandon, and I have a YouTube channel, and I own Bokashi Earthworks, and we're having a 20% off sale with code Flash20 right now. So if you guys are looking to save a little bit of money, um, that's happening until the end of the evening tonight.
Good stuff. Well, we are live, so everybody who's listening to this broadcast can take advantage of that. And if you're listening shortly afterwards, the podcast goes out tomorrow on Monday. So anybody who's listening to the podcast, sorry you'll have missed out on that deal. But Bokashi Earthworks has great prices, even when they're not discounted. I actually make it a habit to buy them at full price to support my homie Brandon. Fucking gotta support the homies. I always see people want to get hookups from their friends and their family, but as a small business owner, I know more than anybody else that every dollar counts, and people paying full price. I think everybody on this panel who provides services or products, they're worth it at the full price. So if you get a discount, then you're getting hooked up, but
Yeah.
they're 100% worth it at the full value. So that being said, very happy to have Brandon here with us this week. I just got something in the mail that's not grow related, but I guess smoke related for me at least. I bought it because they're really cheap now, and they seem pretty effective. One of my OG mentors, he's had one for a while in a larger version, but an ultrasonic cleaner, and he uses it to clean his bongs and stuff. And I just got it to like clean my bowl and like down stem. It's not quite large enough to fit the whole bong in there, but I can clean the bong pretty fine just myself. But the bowl has little crevices and things in there and nooks and crannies, and like I could probably hold it up right now and you could probably see my little down stems a little bit dark. You can run a little Q-tip in there or something and get it cleaned up. But there's a little resin that gets up in there that's all in the deep crevices that is hard to scrape out. And so just setting in an ultrasonic cleaner for a few minutes and letting it run and clean itself up is seemingly going to be something convenient. So that being said, on the grow side of things, we talked about this in the past, but it's always good to go back to it because I'm about to have to start doing it. I'm in the process of cleaning up and resetting for my grow, and I think it goes hand in hand with like Mother's Day and mother's plants, like or mom plants. because if you don't have a clean grow environment, chances are your mother plant is either going to get some sort of infestation of pests like bugs or maybe even a pathogen. And those are going to make the plant basically perform much worse over the long term. So I was going to pass it around the panel and see what are your kind of tips, tricks, and go-to methods for when you're going to reset. Maybe you stopped for a little while, or maybe the grow's just gotten a little dirty. You haven't upkept it as much as you'd like to. Some things that you use to spruce things up to ensure that you're going to not run into pests, pathogens, and things of that nature, or just keeping the grow tip top and nice, clean, and hygienic. And I guess I'll pass it first to Spartan Grown.
Hey, Jack. For me, I'm not the cleanest, honestly. And I'd like to say I'm growing them in dirt. So what's dirt? Why is that a problem? But I will like on resets. I want to sweep the floor. I want to get all the big key one for me is all like the dried up leaves that have fallen off the plant or have fallen out of the container. If they're on the floor or in the room in any way, I want them up off the floor and out of there. Put it in the compost or something like that because that's where the little suckers will hide. That's what might be eggs or who knows what else is on that. In an IPM standpoint, you're just giving hiding places to the bugs, right? So for me, it's more of like just your in your face. I don't want any stray leaves in here. I want the floor swept. Your basic things like that. But if it were like a special circumstance or whatever, I really wanted to, then I get in there with a mop. Like not the broom's not enough. I'll get in there. I'll actually mop the floors all up, and I try to get the hottest water I can get, just so that it dries fast, it evaporates off, and doesn't leave a lot of moisture in the space because that's usually what I would have to worry about more than the other way around. And then if I was going all out, I would even replace the. I have rooms, but I have panda film rooms on the walls. I'd replace that panda film, and that's just duct tape and panda film, man. And if I was being real frosty, I really wanted to go all the way. That's how I do it.
I like that you duct tape versus staple through the panda film because
Oh yeah, no duct tape. I like to use white duct tape too. I'm picky about it.
hey man, it works. It's highly reflective and very sticky. I saw a Mythbusters episode where they basically held a car together on like as much as they could by duct tape, and it was like they took out like so other than like the lug nuts on the fucking tires, like they were holding the bumpers on, the doors, like glass window, like everything was pretty much held together by duct tape. Not only did it drive, they took it on an off-road course and it like held together for several minutes before it started to shake apart. So
I'm pretty sure I saw a Red Green episode where he took two car fronts and cut them in half and duct taped two fronts together.
some
What do
crazy
they say?
stuff.
If you can't, fuck it. If you can't duck it,
That's true.
duck
It's
on another
like
side. Silence is golden, but duct tape is silver.
I also like with a roll of duct tape, WD-40 and some elbow grease, you can fix anything.
Pretty much.
But yeah, that said, Spartan, do you have any like do you use any like bleach or simple green or some sort of foaming cleaners or anything like when you mop, or is it just hot water?
I'll use some cleaners if I'm mopping. And it's honestly I'm not picky about it. I'll get whatever's available to me. Bleach is a good standby. Simple Green's another good one, but I find that if you actually read the bottle of simple green and you look at the application rates of it, it's absolutely ridiculous. You have to use like ungodly amounts of it to really be at the application rate that you need. And it's like I didn't even get close to the application rate, and it was like almost like I was spreading it 100% pure on. It was just like so bubbly. It took so long to really rinse it off. So I kind of got away from simple green. I think simple peak green, the way I was using it before, I wasn't using it right. I was just putting a few little pores in there, and I didn't wasn't reading things. When I actually read it and figured out what you actually have to use to be effective, I was like, yeah, probably not going to use this anymore. So I'm more of a
Xerotol is really good for cleaning.
Xerotol is really good too. It's if you can handle the smell of it.
Could you describe the smell?
Gross. It's a gross smell. No, I don't know. I don't know. It's been years now since I've smelled it, but I'm not sorry about it being years since I've smelled it.
Smells caustic. It is caustic, but it smells like it would be caustic. So it has like this alkalinity to it that you can just smell it.
Like a chemical cleaning agent, like distasteful or not
It's
so
almost like a uh metallic smell almost.
interesting. And does it linger or does it off
No,
gas?
it goes away pretty quick.
Because I've seen people use that stuff pretty liberally in cleaning living rooms. Like I'm talking foam the entire room, lights,
Yeah.
fans, everything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it'll linger for that day or whatever. Then the next day you probably won't smell
You won't smell it at all.
That's good. And
It,
I've heard it doesn't show up in any sort of testing either. So like I've seen people use it in like unfortunately stages of growth that I wouldn't recommend spraying the xylitol on a plant or around a plant, but people are doing it anyway because they're like, oh, this shit goes away. It's not detectable in part per billion testing after like a week or something. So
well, I think it's just hypochloric acid and hydrogen peroxide,
I
which
think
is like
you are right.
like super low pH water, and I don't know, maybe it's I can't remember if it's super low in pH or if it's high in pH. I think it's actually high in pH.
I love those heated dab tools, Spartan. He just held up. Is that the
Oh, yeah!
Saber?
Shout out to Focus V, man. I went up to the booth and he handed it to me. I said, "Man, I really want one of these," and he just handed it to me. I was like, "Oh, dude, thank you. You just made my freaking day."
Those things are badass. I think it's called a Saber or something like that. It's got a
Yep, it's
light
the
on it.
Saber. Yeah, it's got a light on it that you can dab at night. If you want to, a little LED light on there. Yep, it's super cool, and it charges with the same charger as my cell phone, so I'm super happy about that. I did it. It's like they suckered me in though, because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna support this guy, so I ordered their portable to the Aries, so it's coming in the mail. I think it came to the house yesterday or something, so I'll get it when I get home.
I'm a sucker for Puffco. I've got three of the freaking hot knives. I don't know why I've got more than one, but I got this pink, which is like a retail exclusive. Um, it's basically just without a light version, but they're little heated tools. I got a black one and a silver, I guess, opal or something like
Yeah, those
whatever
seem
the fuck they
thinner
call it.
too, yeah.
But
These are
they
like
work.
sharpenables. So they sit like flat, they don't roll around. I love that.
Yeah, this one's like a rectangle, sort of rounded on the one side, but it's flat on the other side, so it won't
Nice.
roll. And they recharge with USB-C, which is fucking nice because that's my phone
Yep,
charger, and so
exactly.
does the
I love
Puffco,
that.
and it makes it real convenient for
The
traveling.
Aries I just got even supports wireless charging. I think the Puffco does as well, the new one.
That's pretty wild, man. Yeah, the world we're living in, 2024 is a stoner's paradise. I'm talking about ultrasonic cleaners to clean my bong bong and have like sparkling fucking clean bowls. Just set it and forget it. Come back a little bit later. I saw one tip or trick somebody gave, and they said to like if you're going to use an ultrasonic cleaner for pieces like that, to put it inside of like a bag or a jar, so that way the actual cleaner itself doesn't get real dirty. Like the jar or bag that you are cleaning it in will keep it cleaner. So on the cleaning front, but I'm curious if the American one has any tips, tricks, or ideas about when you go to reset or clean your grow room, grow space, or even grow equipment. Because this ultrasonic cleaner could be used for, your blade that you use to cut the plants with, or
Yeah,
something
there you
else.
go. If you really don't want to worry about it, get a landlord that's going to come inspect the place in a legal spot. And every so often, you'll really do a thorough cleaning. So basically, yeah, that's what's happened to me in the past. Most of my heavy cleaning is when I have to clear out everything and make it look good for either an inspector or the landlord or a realtor agent. But like most of you guys said, I like a vacuum though. I hate sweeping in the grow area because anything that's flying around in the air could end up in your nugs. Like people get cat hairs all the time and shit like that. So I like vacuums with a good filter. And other than that, cleaning the fans, that's really important in my mind because the fans they lose their, not their velocity, but they lose their pushing of the
Power.
wind power because the blade isn't, that sharp edge isn't cutting the air and pushing it. So I'll mention that. And other than that, I took my charcoal filter out one time. I had one of those and just turned it over and banged it out. It had some shit in there because I have mine like pushing into the filter, not sucking through it. So the inside is where the dirt would get. And I always put some sort of filter over all the intakes and all the exhaust. Even well, when the exhaust sucks through that filter, I want a pre-filter. So I had my ducted HPS lights for a long time, and on the one side that was end, I put that filter media with a rubber band over the one end of it, so that most things wouldn't get through. But when there's a breach in that security, there's always I would find fungus gnats in the on the shield of my light. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's important. Other than that, yeah, I guess that's it. Pretty much the vacuum and making sure your fans are clean all the time. Not so much, you know, you should clean the fans more than reset everything, I would think. I hope. All right. And that's it.
I would do the fans every grow. As I've started to do that, I notice like it's definitely, especially because I have two cats, they'll get hair and dust, dirt, debris, or whatever in there. I got this little, it's basically like a rechargeable air in a can, but it's like a little jet fan that you can go around. And I use it for my tower fans, my window fans for my house, and like all other, but like the grow fans, especially. If you have those little 6-inch clip fans or even the ones on the wall, they'll have stuff that gets into the motor that, like, even if you clean the blades perfectly and the shields perfectly, there's stuff that's inside the mechanism that's hard to get in unless you take it all the way apart. And just shooting some compressed air, like the air in a can, or something like this, a little rechargeable thing, it brings these fans back to basically brand new, like 99% or 100% of their original speeds and ability to move air, which is one of the most important parts of a grow in all reality. Because if you're getting stagnant pockets of air, you're getting microclimates, and in those microclimates, you're more likely to get molds, mildews, and just general issues. So having consistent airflow and clean grow spaces, major thing for sure. And couldn't agree more with the making sure intakes and things like that are sealed up and as best you can, making sure that intakes and uh, outflow is all filtered and blocked up. But pass it over to Brandon and ask if you have any ideas or thoughts on the whole reset process. Do you like the Zero Tall product? Do you use that? Do you have any other thoughts or ideas on how to clean up or reset to keep your grow space nice and clean?
Yeah, I mean, just doing your all your maintenance, making sure that again you clean your fans and you clean out your air handlers and all that other stuff. Zero Toll's good, bleach is fine. Um, I mean those things are pretty standard. I feel like.
I like bleach because it is so standard. A lot of people understand how to use it, the application rates, the cost is relatively low. If you use it at proper application rates, it's relatively safe. And if you don't overdo it, it's not going to have a really long lingering effect. I always follow up bleach though
You
with
could get it everywhere though. That's another big plus is you could go to the corner store and get freaking bleach if you run out. Whereas some of the
yeah.
other stuff, it's not like specialty, you know?
Yeah, you don't have to order it offline. There's no shipping, and you can get it today. Like Spartan said, whatever your corner store, like they sell it at convenience stores. Like it is everywhere. It's used for laundry and any other stuff. So you don't even have to look like a stoner when you go buy it. It's just like, oh, this person's getting bleached. They're probably a responsible citizen, or maybe they just murdered somebody and they're cleaning up the scene. But moving on, we'll maybe talk a little bit. Actually, I want to ask Matthew if you have thoughts on this general idea. You actually taught me a word. I at least heard you say it, and I Googled it because I didn't know what it was. I think it was detritus. And generally, I always think of like small debris, like what Spartan was talking about, getting rid of that stuff in between grows and making sure you don't have little dust, debris, dirt, detritus, or whatever we want to refer to it as around the grow. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts or general ideas on this matter, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brandon kind of referenced this a little bit too with a broader response, but I definitely people who have been following us for a long time, they've heard all kinds of things from me, but a big one for me is still like not having pet plants, I think is important if you're growing certain plants and it's like important. So for cannabis, for example, you're relying on it having a certain amount of production for yourself or whatever. Um, and even in professional spaces too, I've encountered this sort of interesting thing where people are like, "Hey, I own a greenhouse. I just bought some plants from Home Depot or something. I'm gonna put them in my hothouse that I own because I own it and I can do this because I own it." And then like they get bugs, right? You know what I mean? So that happens at commercial scale too, I'm sad to say. And it also happens at a home grow scale as well. And also like being cautious and conscientious. You've probably heard me say the saying, 1 year of seeding, 7 years of weeding. It's true. If you let some things, and I think I've told the story of the dandelion and like cudweed and like horsetail that I've seen like prop up on like the tops of greenhouses because they're just such a like an indelible plant that will like grow in like a crook or a cranny somewhere. And so like good luck, getting up there and controlling the like I don't think anyone not a lot of people are paying their greenhouse employees to or even for yourself, like are you getting up on your house and looking into your gutters and being like, oh, there's like a bunch of dandelions here or something like that. So these things can host bugs that are not a problem. That can be food for good bugs, but they can also host bad bugs. So just be vigilant about that on your property. Super important. And that hygiene doesn't necessarily have to worry about dirt and debris. It's kind of less more benign, like Spartan was saying.
The dandelion is always fascinating to me because I think most people, at least in North America or the US, as a child, you probably ran through grass somewhere and saw that white puffy cotton ball sticking out of the ground and picked it and blew it or kicked it or, just engaged with that in some way, not even realizing probably at the time you're spreading this weed all over the place and its seeds are flying all over and it's resilient. Like you're saying, it can grow in like a corner of a greenhouse or on top of
What's
one.
wrong with that? Dandelions are awesome.
I'm not saying that they're terrible, but it's
Let me tell you, my buddy grew a plant out in the woods that I had to go water for him one time. And when he harvested, I went over his house, and those little white puffy things that you blow, when you're a kid, they were all up in that shit, dude. It really was a heartbreak. I was like,
Are you
dude, it's
sure it
all
was
up in there.
dandelions?
Oh
You
no,
sure it
that's
wasn't?
Yeah,
terrible.
You
yep.
sure it wasn't
There's some
cottonwood?
like
No,
oh
I'm sure it
yeah,
was those things,
there's some
man.
really
Well,
invasive plants like we call it pampas grass or foxtail here in California. It gets everywhere, these small little fluff. Oh,
yeah,
I
like
talked
I
about a
was wondering.
contaminant.
Messes up
I,
like HVAC, clogs it all up. It's a terror.
I was wondering if there's a timing thing that I like because it was harvest. I mean, those things were popping off obviously when it was buds on the plant because it was all stuck to them, man. I was heartbroken, but um, yeah, I was thinking early on too. Maybe there's a certain time. Can you wait out the fucking caterpillars and then start your crop after the They're late season,
We,
right? You can't do that.
well, you kind of can, right? So
All
like that's
right, now
actually
we're
what
talking.
I think maybe you're even remembering something because I think I'd said something a while ago. I'd given a little teaser for that video. Because like that's one of the things you can do with some crops, and I think cannabis is especially for growing it indoors, but even outdoor, like some of these budworms, they're a huge
Mhm.
problem in like June, July, August, and I would say probably at the end, right? So like Croptober kind of time frame. So like if you're able to harvest earlier in the year, like if you have it set up like an indoor, for example, is obviously easier. You can have cycles, and you mostly have physical structures, or greenhouses even are going to be like that. But yeah, if you could somehow
What if you late plant?
like
Plant.
plant a little bit later, or
Yeah.
have like a shorter harvesting
Mhm.
plant, yeah, yeah.
The
I've
other
done
thing I
that.
was going to say.
I did that for the first time last year. I was happy with the results, but it was honestly a mother plant. Air quote, hey, happy Mother's Day, everybody. But it was a mother plant that
Oh sure.
I didn't want to kill, and it was August. I was like, it was Mac 1. I was like, oh, I'll just throw this because Mac 1 takes forever to veg anyway. So, I mean, this is an older Mac 1. And I was like, oh, I'll just stick it outside. It's August. It'll flower outside. So I didn't have space for it. So I just stuck it in a
It is one
vegetable.
1.8 billion.
I just stuck it like a vegetable bed and it grew and it just started to bud early in August. It started to turn. So I think it kind of missed a lot of the pest because it didn't have big buds and stuff like it normally would and all that. So and I don't remember what I pulled from that plant, but it was like maybe half a pound or something. But still it was kind of chill. I was like, man, I might do this again next year just because it was so much easier to deal with. It was smaller, a lot smaller than normal, so way easier to deal with, way easier to harvest, way easier to hide among your vegetables, so it looks normal and like it belongs there.
And
So
I know
I really
like
like that.
I know most of the people that we're talking to are probably in the northern hemisphere where this matters a lot more, like a temperate environment. But if you're equatorial, then this is a lot less important because like budworms, for example, are active practically year round essentially. And so like you can't really outweight that so much.
I
So
was
that's an important point to make. As a professional, I'll say that.
Other,
Sentinel. I got a
go
quick
ahead.
question. Do the moths lay the caterpillar eggs? Is that correct or no?
Yeah, that's right. So they lay the eggs, and then the larvae hatch from the eggs, and they immediately burrow. If we're talking about budworms. Um, so that's the problem. You can't find them. So, but as long as they can't lay the eggs, so like some caterpillars, like army worms, same family, they will like eat some of the plants, and maybe they will drop from the plant, or maybe they eat all the foliage, and so they go to find another plant on the ground, and so they'll march to another plant, so to speak. Now, those ones, you might want to be more vigilant on the ground, but like for the budworms, like they don't really do that so much. That's my understanding. So as long as you don't let them deposit the eggs, you probably won't have a problem.
So a small phalanx, maybe 5, 6 little mini drones to buzz around and just chop them
That's
up in
right.
the air. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Sungrown
you want at least
707
two wings. You want a joint all domain, command and control.
quadcopter, dude. You got to take out two at a time.
That's right.
Double kill. But
Double kill,
on a
right.
serious note,
Spectacular.
the Sungrown 707 made use of his, not his, but he used this thing called a Dynatrap and had good success with it in a small outdoor grow kind of near their house. They had it set up, and one season had issues with that. And once they implemented the Dynatrap, maybe or two, I think it worked pretty well for them. So it's an option that's out there. It may be a little bit over. It might kill off other stuff that's not just budworms, other stuff. But that being said, if you're trying to get a cannabis crop, it's one of the tools in the
This
tool
is
belt.
it's not hygiene related, but yeah, you could also, if you're like Tao and like I was talking to somebody, or maybe it was on the podcast here, but like like some of these places, or actually no, it wasn't here, but some of these regions in like the East Coast, of the U.S., I know, um, a fellow from North Carolina was telling me that pretty bad for budworms. At least that's their experience. And it's not hygiene, but you can also think about like getting rid of plants that could be around, right? That would go after that would uh basically keep the moths like right next to your place. And actually, what were you saying, Jack? You reminded me of something, but I forgot.
What you just said made me think of like trees and other bushes and shrubs and stuff around. But I was talking about the Dynatrap. It's like I think it's like a UV based light trap that
Oh yeah,
attracts
yeah,
them and
yeah.
then
Or
they get
two,
stuck.
too, I think.
It might not be UV. It's called a Dynatrap, I think.
Yeah, yeah. That's for like regular gnats and flies too, I believe.
You can use
I
a
just wanted to
pheromone
mention.
trap too. That's what I was
Okay.
thinking of. So
That's what I
it's a
really
little
was.
overkill perhaps, but like if you're worried about when, so that's why it was relevant. Sorry about that. So like yeah, it's like in places where you're likely to get a heavy amount, and let's be honest, that's a lot of places. So you could buy a pheromone trap. They're very inexpensive. And you set it up, and it doesn't track the females, it tracks the males. So the males, if you get a bunch of them, you start getting a bunch. When you start getting a few, I would consider like, making sure your plan's all good to go. When you start getting a bunch, like a huge hockey stick, start applying your preventatives.
I just wanted to mention that one time I got spider mites and I traced it back to the lady that lived upstairs. Well, I call her a lady, but she was my age, whatever. But the lady that lived upstairs, she had gotten a house plant from Home Depot like 2 weeks earlier.
I was gonna say
And
you trace it back to Home Depot because that's what I was about to tell a
yep,
story
Yeah,
about.
for
And it's
sure.
fine to
yep,
say lady.
And
Lady is a perfectly fine term. I don't know when all of a
uh,
sudden people out there started getting
I
offended
don't
by the
think
term
that's
lady,
an insulting term. Hot take.
well,
Maybe
even
I
a
don't
for
little
want
a
somebody
general.
young
calling
person.
me sir. I'm too young to be a sir, but yeah,
Well, you're
that's what I
definitely
was
not a
thinking about.
Syrah, so it's okay. So,
There you go. But
He's not
yeah,
that bold.
I traced it back to her, and she like it was. She had her own space up there, but I think I totally believe that's where it came from because I went to visit her, and the thing was covered with webs. I was like,
yeah, it's plausible.
yeah. So I would definitely say be careful of any plant life you take in, or even like if you go to Home Depot, I would like double check your clothes, whatever, man. Wherever you go, make sure you're not bringing guests with you. Yeah.
More common than not, unfortunately. And it's not just them, the other big box stores, Lowe's or whoever. We're not discriminating or trying to attack any one of them, but allegedly, hypothetically, because we don't want any of their fucking legal team coming after us if somebody clips this and sends it out. But Spartan, who's that handsome or pretty doggo that you're petting over there?
This is the beautiful Endo. She is a Great Dane Doberman mix, I think. Mostly
Good
Great
looking
Dane.
dog.
She reminds me of Marmaduke all the way, but she's in love with me. As
Sweet, sweet pup.
tend to have that effect on dogs. They love me. I love them.
I think that it's people with a good heart, and also they tend to like beards. I think like cats and dogs. Like I think they
She
almost think
really
that we're
does.
like
She
one of
really
them.
does. She'll stick her nose up underneath it and like flip it around her and stuff. I'm like, what are you doing?
She's sniffing it now. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah, my cats are the same. And I saw a clip of this lady using the term, who had a cat, and the cat was bonding with her boyfriend or whatever, and the boyfriend has a beard, and the cat was like rubbing all over the guy, and then she goes and gets like a beard from the costume store
Oh
and
my
puts it
God.
on, and the cat literally starts like rubbing all over her and like was obsessed with her. So it's certainly a part of the deal, but I also think they respond to people treating them well, and anybody who gets respect from animals usually gets my respect too because they tend to have a good eye for trusting the right people.
I agree with you, man. I think dogs are a good judge of people too, So if a dog reacts poorly around a person, a lot of a lot of times that means that there's something going on with them.
I totally agree, and it's so many times like kind of taking me off guard because they made the read way longer than I before I did, and like it took me like a week or a month or a year to figure out like that person had something else going on with them, and you know underlying motives or something like that, or just a nefarious nature to them. And yeah, dogs can it's like a sixth sense or the body language. They say something like 80 or 90% of communication is nonverbal. So just by seeing somebody's actions and how they move and how they interact, their facial expressions. I saw a pretty cool study about how dogs can look at people's facial expressions and actually read them really well, like to a very, very high degree. And they across hundreds of different faces and emotions and things like that. So they're very perceptive animals, and I think they're great garden companions. They keep us in a good mood. They keep us happy, and if we're happy in the garden, then we're usually doing a better job in the garden or anywhere else in life, with the family,
Dogs
etc.
are, and there's so many things I like. I don't want to derail the show, but there's so
Dogs
many
are better
things
than people. I want to throw that in there. There's no way you can even convince me otherwise. I'd rather hang
Percentage
out with a
wise,
pack of dogs than a
percentage
pack
wise,
of
I'd be like,
people. Yeah.
I'd get behind that because yeah, I'm spoiled to have so many good people around me, like you all. But when you get out into society in general, you see all the fucking videos of crazy ass people snapping left and right. It makes you appreciate the good people that are out there, and it makes you appreciate how many dogs are good. For every one you run into, it's like 99 out of 100 are fucking good. Like maybe one
The ones
is
that
not
are
the
bad,
best.
it's the owner's fault. And I'll take
Yeah,
it back.
Abuse and
Other than the
neglect.
median company and everyone in chat, dogs are better than all other humans.
yeah, for sure. It's like a dog is always fucking happy to see you. As happy to see you on day one as they're happy to see you on day 1,001. They're still just as happy to see you every single day. And that's just like, I don't know, that's something that's won me over. I've always had dogs my whole life.
I grew up with them as well, and I will admit cats have grown on me quite a lot. Maine Coon specifically, I'll say, because like they say they're like the
Like a
dog,
dog.
like a cat.
Yeah.
So if that's the comparison, it's like, well, shit, I'm gonna get the one that's most like a dog because if I can't have a dog and I want something that just like that, it greets you. And like my cats sit and speak every morning to get a treat. So my last cat I taught to shake my hand, like sit and give me paw. And yeah, they're definitely a great addition to the garden. And back all the way to Egypt times, that's the fucking reason they became friendly with them is because they chased off the pests. So going back to IPM, the reason that they were around is because they ate the rodents and the birds and the other things that were trying to eat and kill the crops. So we do have a little bit of a symbiotic relationship with them going back all the way
Yeah, they
to
eat
early
everything,
times. Yeah, they
just
over
like us. Ha ha ha.
we're
Hey,
both alpha
sorry.
predators. We kill everything and eat everything.
You know what I just realized though? But not even the big box stores, like who is it? Stony Creek did a mention in the chat. Even the small garden stores could have bugs that you bring home with you. So yeah,
Especially
Absolutely. Even the
especially though
weed,
sometimes I hate to say
the
it.
yeah.
the like nightshade on the side of the road could have like a bevy of white flies or something. I go on hikes pretty often, and and even in nature preserves and things, it's pretty pernicious. And then like just on the way, you'll see like a fence line of like multiple houses in like a suburban area, and just chock full of. I watch these thistle plants grow, and stinging nettle, and they just erupt out of the soil like an inferno of like verdant green
So fast,
and
so
deep
fast.
The stinging
purple
nettle is
and
crazy.
thorns. Nothing's screwing with those thistle plants. I walk by, nothing.
You just gotta pull them down by the root, and you can just pull them out with your bare hands, man. I was doing that the other day. I had so many of those stupid things in my raised beds. So many thistle.
Milk
It,
thistle seeds are supposedly good for your liver.
Well,
really,
stinging nettle can be used for
Kidneys,
like a nutrient.
liver, one of those really
I know that
important
they're
like
the thistle
detoxification
flower.
organs.
The thistle flower, though, the little purple flowers that gets on it, so freaking good if you pull up the flower and just bite the ends off, get the nectar. Oh,
Like a artichoke.
I don't know. I've never had artichoke, so I don't
Artichokes are
know.
thistle. For those who don't know, artichokes are a thistle
I
family
did not
plant.
know that.
I didn't know that either. Today I learned.
So yeah, that's why they look. That's why they're so unkillable. If that's also been your experience with artichokes, like
Yes.
me.
They break off at the root so easy, but if you're like careful and ginger and you can pull it off, which is hard because they're usually wet and slimy, but if you pull it, it's one big root usually, and it could be like fucking almost 2 foot long sometimes. Ridiculous, the taproot. It reminds me of dandelion root. Insane.
Inu the life, I knew the life is our stinging nettle good medicine. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some people. It's like dose makes the poison, right? There are definitely various ways people have used like compounds like these that are irritating in certain dose, but then you dilute them out, right? And you can use them for all kinds of things, capsaicin even for peppers.
Well, you can
But I'm
go.
not an herbalist or anything like that, so
I'm a very
some people have different
herbalist,
reactions to it too.
but I don't know. Maybe you don't know, but there's a practice where people will take bees. I'm sure you know, Matthew.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Or
Will they take
bullet ants, for example.
Yeah, and they'll sting themselves in inflamed joints, for example, to
Oh
get
yes, yeah.
to get
Yeah.
that response to where it actually brings inflammation down and they get relief from it. So I think stinging nettle just in a very simplistic way can be used similarly. And
I think some people do use the like yeah, for like joint pain, right?
yeah,
I've
because
heard that
it
before.
comes with like almost a numbing sensation after the pain. So you bite.
Yeah, and I guess like and it's like because yeah, like you said it really well. It's like for some people it works out that for certain ailments, maybe you're stimulating like a different response that happens to then have like a spillover effect that makes the other pain kind of go away. Like you said, like
Yeah,
with inflammation stuff. It's kind of neat to look at things that I mean, we do that with a lot of medicines, right? When you get back down to it, that's like the mechanism of action, right? Even when we're like, ooh, pepper's spicy, like
right.
it's supposed to be bad for mammals, but we were like, oh yeah, bet.
And then we found
Challenge
out
Anti-inflammatory.
accepted.
and we found out those compounds like capsaicin are super medicinal too.
I was just listen. I love this guy Maccabee. Most people know him from his Cucumba rap, but he does like he calls it Medical Monday, and he raps about like fruit and vegetables and like the different benefits, like anti-inflammatory and this and that, and peppers, capsaicinoids. I think cayenne was the one that he's talking about, but it ends up it's causes some pain receptors to go off, but it also is anti-inflammatory and can help with like sinuses and other things. There's so many different benefits potentially. So the dose is the poison is certainly an interesting concept. And even water can kill you if you drink too much of it. That always blew me away. I love water, and I know it's really important. Most people don't drink enough water, so I'm not gonna like be like, hey, water's dangerous. It's like you have to drink like fucking gallons of it, like in like under an hour, to fucking get that. I think it's like reverse osmosis. It happens in your blood or some shit, and it ends up making people sick and die.
Yeah, it's like a toxic level. Yeah, because what happens is that yeah, your cells can't keep equilibrium. So basically, they all have to like take in the water, which kills them. Right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty
Wow.
sure is how it
we're
works. So
80%
that's
water,
still
so it makes sense if you like
yeah.
overflood your system with some other foreign water in a way too rapid rate, it would cause some issues, which brings me back to the growing topic and random segue. Something I forgot to mention earlier was that I was surprised when I learned and even saw firsthand, because I personally like to buy Lady Greenstock some flowers, and cut flowers can
Okay,
have
yeah. We were gonna
pests.
ask.
They have pests.
Yeah, for sure. Let me just say,
Fuck,
I
man. I
have
thought
8 years
like
of
everyone says like, oh,
experience.
once you chop the plant, it's dead. It's a dead material, blah 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 blah. But in cut flowers, they're
They
like
keep
keeping
it
them kind of
alive,
semi-alive.
of course.
So like my you know, chimp brain was like, oh, when I cut my cannabis plant and hang it, like oftentimes like you're not worried about pests really in the dry and cure process for the most part. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, a dead flower, dried flower, cured flower is like not really other than like molds and mildews and things like that. Not worrying much about pests in that regard. But when it comes to cut flowers, some of them are like they're kept in water and they're given nutrients and they're basically, you know, kept in a stasis almost where they're near alive or even potentially like I don't know if you could root some of these flowers, but I'm sure some of them could be brought back if they're able to be rooted, just like you can with
Maybe the
so many other plants.
succulents. But
Yeah, so
yeah, and I mean that's a really good point. And the other aspect of that is that there are pests where because people have asked me about this before, and it's true. Like most, like for example, aphids, spider mites, thrips, whitefly, all the sucking plant insects, they feed on phloem, they feed on sap. So if there's no sap flowing, then they're not going to be able to eat. Or they feed on the cell contents that have water in them too. So that's going to be a problem for spider mites, for example, that feed on individual cells and thrips. But things like budworms, certain beetles that are like really big grain pests and things like that, or they feed like they'll feed on dried plant material. At least they will feed on it while it's drying, and maybe they don't prefer it. But like budworms even can be a post-harvest problem. You might have missed it. You harvest your plant, you go to hang it up, and oops, you see a bunch of caterpillars come off. If you've ever had that happen to you, click the like button. But yeah, that can be a problem. And maybe that can also lead to fungal problems too, or either be a vector, or you could also have that problem as well. So they don't care about how um, alive the tissues are. So
Lady
you
Greenstock
got to
picked
think like a pest.
a wildflower here in San Diego as we were walking one day, and she was going to like put it in like her ear. And I guess it was instant karma as she looked into it and got spooked because she saw a pest. And I looked at it, and it ended up being like a Western flower thrip. So it's like, oh, good thing
Oh
you didn't put
yeah,
that on your ear and like
they
walk back
love
in
the
the house with that.
pollen. Yeah, yeah. Be careful with flowers. I was seeing a lot of island morning glory or bindweed. It's known for in California. Um, there's all kinds of these like trumpet flowers and datura and things like that and like wild potato type plants where they're like white or violet, and if you peer inside, you'll see that there's like all kinds of like black things moving around, eating the pollen and the floral tissues. So yeah,
Isn't
don't bring
datura
that
like
in.
poisonous to us? Why do they grow that all around here? It's just like fucking everywhere. I
No, it's
see,
natural. They don't grow it. It's just natural. Um, yeah.
but isn't it like pretty poisonous if you, I know people smoke it, but if you smoke it, it's not poisonous. But if you like eat it or touch it, isn't
It's
there some
all,
sort
I
of,
mean, it's poisonous, but I mean, like, psilocybin is poisonous, when you think about it in a certain context.
so it's not like
You're
deadly
getting
poisonous?
intoxicated. But Datura is really, really, really toxic.
It
And
can
I don't think I'm not an expert, but you probably don't want to mess with it.
I always stay the hell away from it because although
so
it looks kind of cool, I've
uh,
heard it's toxic.
when I was doing a bunch of research on psychedelic plants, the datura is what is considered hell's bells. It is hallucinogenic, but it has to be prepared the right way because if you don't, you could definitely die from
Think
consuming
of it
it.
like fugu fish, you'd have to get an expert, and the number of people who I would trust to prepare datura is
Zero.
low. So yeah.
With
And allegedly it's not a great experience. So it kind of, allegedly, someone who isn't me has said that.
Well, and not worth it for sure if it's fucking not the best experience to
Sounds like
risk death.
similar to Salvia, it sounds like.
At
Or
least
like
salvia, you're not gonna
some
die.
people say the deliriant effect of Amanita muscara is like that, or even like mescaline is kind of a deliriant supposedly, right? So
I,
but I've
I've
never
done
tried
some
mescalines.
massive doses of salvia, like super, super potent extracts. That shit. I mean,
I've
I,
always heard bad things about that,
Oh,
man.
it's fun. It's wild as fuck. I would never do it again, but my one experience was crazy as shit. It's a
There you
takes you
have
to
it,
another
folks.
galaxy.
There you go. Time travel and spatial travel is real.
I
I
would
want to
say
hear Brandon's experience. Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon, how was your salvia experience on the high extract? Do you remember like any of the numbers?
I've done probably more salvia than I think anybody I've ever met. I've smoked it so many times. But some of the effects were really wild. I remember the first time I did it. I was in my backyard and I actually dropped the bong because it was a completely disassociative effect to where I was outside of my body and I was watching my body react to the experience, and then I like came back into my body and I went inside and I like stepped onto the carpet and I felt like my whole entire existence, like consciousness was like part and entwined in everything, and then I fell down into the carpet and I felt like I was like part of a pool of carpet and I was like in there fucking swimming. I
You
came
didn't
to.
fall into the carpet, you fell into the carpet.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it, yeah, it's like
You like
if you were to
you
dive
melded
into
with, you
water.
fused with the carpet.
Yeah, it's like if the sensation is like if you were to dive into a pool of water and become water.
That's like those Adult Swim put out like some really nice gosh, I forget what they're called, but like they had like these videos that were like they're just like editing things, but like they're actually pretty trippy. And you'd have like liquid, you have like different topics like air and I think hair was one of them, and like liquid and water, and they're very anyways, it's definitely something you want to watch when you're in a different state of mind.
When I
But
smoked salvia, it was definitely similar to Brandon's experience.
um I've also had experiences where I was like talking to aliens and shit on
I need to
salvia.
try that
My
shit. I
buddy
never
talked to
tried
a
it yet.
zebra in the woods and he was like petting it and talking to it. I was like, what the fuck? But
Like
yeah,
I remember one experience. That was the last time that I did salvia. It was so like nerve wracking because I was communicating with like gray aliens. I shit you not. It was so fucking wild. And I
yeah,
was like, you know what? I
salvia's
don't do
it
this
was real
anymore.
wild because like you could like you said, you hit the nail on the head. It's dissociative. Like what my body was doing and what my mind was experiencing were two different things entirely. Like I was in the woods and I ran like 50 yards full sprint away from my brother and his buddy who I was smoking it with.
Oh shit.
And, you know, I at this point I'm just seeing white. I don't see shit for like the first 30 seconds. Like at first I'm like, oh, it's not gonna work. I'm holding it down, trying to hold it in for a long time, exhale it, like 30 seconds, a minute go by, I don't feel shit. Everything goes white, like a fucking movie's about to start. And apparently I'm sprinting through the woods, full fucking sprint. Didn't hit a tree. I stop dead wherever, like full sprint to dead stop, put my arms up in the air and start waving back and forth, yelling, I'm a tree. I'm a tree.
Oh yeah, I heard another experience somebody had said that they felt like they got turned into a tree.
Yeah, it was funny because when I snapped back to, my brother was like grabbing me because so he didn't want me to like run into a fucking tree and hurt myself. So I see him like grabbing me. I was like, I'm all right. I like walked over. There's like a little pond. We're in a metro park. I sit down. I look at the lake and like there's like little flying fish like Dr. Seuss style like flying over the fucking lake. The trees have faces and mouths and they're like swaying back and forth and like looking at me, like feeling like I'm high as fuck on a heavy indica for like the last 10 or 15 minutes and it all sort of like fades back to reality. I was like, what the fuck just happened? But yeah, it's I would never drive. There's a guy called like gardening on salvia. There's a bunch of videos of him just getting like real high on salvia and trying to do gardening tasks, and he never ends up accomplishing any of them because he gets way too fucked up to actually be able to function. So yeah, I was doing that. It was called like purple sticky salvia, and it was like 140x or 120x or whatever, where you're like smoking big bong rips of it and holding it down for a long ass time. But it's certainly not something I would recommend for the casual toker out there. It's not
It's
anything
the
like
first
cannabis.
time anybody's told me any positive experiences, honestly, about it. I love listening to stories about, people's experiences. So I listen to a lot, and I've heard a lot of like the one about the tree was terrifying to me because of the way they described it was that they were in a basement and they were with their buddies and they all had smoked some and they all to this person everybody had turned into a tree just with the faces, and yet they could not move. They felt like stuck. and they felt like time slowed down for, so to them it was like torture, like took forever. He couldn't move, and everybody else was having their own experience, so they're just leaving him alone. So he's just sit until they could start getting back to reality for them to go check on him. He was sitting there thinking he was a tree the entire time, not moving.
Yeah, it's wild because like after everything went white, like saw my like Brandon saw my body from like an out of body experience, but it was like Toy Story 3, like toys on a conveyor belt about to like roll into like the lava pit, but instead of a lava pit, it was just like giant cogs in a wheel, and it just like crunched me up, and I started getting packaged into fucking cereal boxes. It's like what the fuck is going on? And
Yeah, or it almost feels like you're dominoes and your domino being toppled over. Like the effects that I felt off of Salvia are crazy.
Yeah, it's far out there. And the funniest thing was like as I was coming back to the cereal boxes started to have my brother and my brother's buddies' faces on them. And it was like so vivid. It was like hot pink and like bright blue, like the almost like
Super bright colors.
cotton candy, like, color. But it was like Captain Crunch cereal, but like cotton candy colors. And just
What
like
was that meaning to you? Did it make them any meaning to you, having their faces on cereal? I mean, if you choose to share.
I think like ultimately reflecting back on it, I've ascribed more meaning to it, where I think it's like I didn't want to be a cog in the wheel. Maybe I didn't want to be like them, like packaged into a fucking box or something. And they were both more stereotypical. They played their role in society and life, and um, I didn't want to be just like them. I liked them for a lot of reasons, and I got along with them very well, but I had a different path that I wanted to go down.
Different goal. Yeah, different goals. That's cool.
Kind
And
of like that. Speaking of the Toy Story example, like when Buzz Lightyear finds like all the other Buzz Lightyears on the shelf, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm a unique, special individual, and it's like people have thought of the same thoughts you've thought of perhaps for centuries. And
it's funny because it was far before the Toy Story, that whole like conveyor belt scene.
oh, that's interesting.
And then
Yeah, but
when I
like it's
saw that,
definitely that's why people like to reference it. It's such a relatable um
yeah,
signal, right?
shit going off to the fucking well, and now especially because like with technology, we were talking about like fans and cleaning them out each run. They want you to the fans that I can get on Amazon will break in 6 months if I don't be very careful with them. They want you to buy another one every 6 months, whether it's your iPhone, your laptop, your car. They don't want it to run for 20, 30, 40 years because like luxury brands are like, oh, it doesn't look good if we have these old cars on the road. So they won't even like really do their best to keep maintenance up on them. They'd rather you buy the new one, trade the old one in. They'll crush it, get parts, whatever, sell it off for whatever materials they can, and keep the next new ones rolling. They want you to get the new whatever. They don't want the old ones to keep on living on and on. And it's unfortunate, but they always say things aren't made like they used to be. And as technology is definitely getting better in many, many regards, durability and longevity, I think, are two things that have drastically suffered in the race of we want the next best, newest thing, fastest, coolest, sharpest, whatever. There's always a next one next year. It's going to be the point 0.5 or the 2.5 or whatever, model and
The
incremental increase.
9,000. Yeah, what so speaking about that and maybe like something very rare for me to do actually put us more closer to the topic and not from it. What would be like kind of a reset if you were to choose a technology that you feel like maybe is a little slept on that like a home grower can use? Because a lot of this tech has become cheaper, more robust, more sophisticated. We've talked about automation a lot, but like I'm curious to know what some things to do. Let's say you're at a reset, an impasse, got a little extra. What are you recommending to make the grow a little bit more efficient or something? And it could be organic too. There's various sensors and things.
Reinvesting in yourself and your own grow with modern ways, whether it's I've got one
Exactly.
sitting next to me that I think is an easy one. This little laser temperature thermometer. I actually just saw, I believe it's AC Infinity is doing now like a VPD specific one. So it's a laser temperature thermometer, but it then automatically translates it to VPD, and I think it even shows you like a color, like a green, yellow, or red or something like that if it's like within whatever range you maybe set to or whatever they have a set range. and trying to coach people more into using that metric and understanding it. But I like this one because it's cheap, affordable. You can get them. They're fairly accurate, I would say, from what I've cross-referenced with more expensive equipment, and they give you insight into your grow that might help. If you're cooking your plants, it's good to know. You got to get the temperatures down.
But
If
Jack, I
it's,
could just put my face in there and I could just feel the photons hit my face.
I used to do the hand check under the light back when I ran CMH. Is it too hot? Is it too close? But
How often? I'm curious. I actually agree with you completely because it's super easy to get, and you were talking about it before. So I actually really like that you referenced that again. I'm curious, how many times have you like maybe did like a hand check or like just kind of got a feel, and then you used the thermometer and you were like, oh wow, it's actually a lot hotter than I would have liked or I thought it was.
it's definitely happened at least a dozen times. We're surprisingly bad at estimating temperature based on what we were just doing. Like I'll be like,
Yeah,
oh, it's hot
I
as
agree with
in
you,
this
Jack.
like
house.
That's
I'll
the
tell
thing
you.
people don't want to think about though, but it's true.
Yeah,
Like I'll
let
be
me
doing
tell you.
chores and then I swear it's 10 degrees hotter in the house, but it's just because I got moving around and I'm all heated up
Yeah,
now. And there's not great airflow. So now I'm sweating and I'm like, I swear it's too hot in this house. But then I cool down for a few minutes. I'm like, yeah, it's
and then
actually
you're cold.
chilly or fine.
Yeah, you know what I find the phenomenon that's weird is living in the East Coast. When it's wintertime, 70 feels warm. When it's summertime, 70 feels cool. So that right there will tell you, yeah, your body isn't the best thermometer to
Very
use for
contextual.
testing
We
things.
are
Yeah,
relative. We're very
and yeah,
relative.
Very
doing HVAC
as long as
too.
we're not
Everything's
too
very
hot or
relative.
too cold. I mean, everyone's a little different, but yeah, yeah.
If you
I
move to
agree
San
with that. That's a
Diego, you
really
become a softie, and then anything below 65, you're like freezing. So there's actually some science to
yeah.
like Wim Hof they did some research on that guy who's like doing the deep breathing and like cold exposure. And there's like white fat cells versus brown fat cells. And essentially, if you expose yourself to cold more often, your fat cells get darker and they're more resilient. And I think the darker they are, they're better at holding heat intrinsically, internally. And so there's some sort of weird science behind it. Like me living out here on the West Coast now for a decade plus, I'm less resistant to cold than my family who all still live in Ohio and experience that brutal winter every single year. I go back and I'm like, oh, how do you live through this? But they're just like, yeah, I put on my jacket and some of them are wearing shorts outside when they're fucking shoveling. So it's no big deal. You get used to it, right? Shout out to Boom Farms up in Canada. He's always wearing shorts when he's shoveling, and I think he might be one of those guys who rocks flip-flops in the snow. So you learn to live with it. I had 18 plus winters, so I understand exactly what it's like. But yeah, you learn to adapt and overcome. But physically, I think
Anyone
you
else
do
for
too.
like a technology that you would
Yeah, I would
advise for a reset?
like a couple of questions I wanted to answer with some technology that I have sitting in my that I have had in my room for quite a while now that I've been testing was the Predator lights and hey, Grandmaster LEDs, but it's not out. So what can I say about that? But that's really the one that I'm going to start recommending because yeah, I guess I'll just stop talking about. But it's like I brought compost from outside in, right? Because I didn't give it a fuck because I knew I was gonna be
Hey,
getting.
I'll agree with you there. I mean, not to interrupt, but I'll agree that there are UV light systems, and I've got asked about them recently. Not these ones in particular, but like in general. And yeah, I
Right.
feel like it's something I definitely agree. It's slept on as a concept. Maybe it seems a little bit too
Well,
over-engineered for like a small tent, but I don't think that's true. I don't think
what's
that's true.
cra-
It's very people have been doing it for a long time. So
yeah,
yeah.
what's crazy to me is it's slept on in the United States. That's a very regional thing because like the Swedish have been in
And the Dutch
greenhouse
for me,
growing,
I would
Dutch,
agree.
oh yeah, they have just been crushing with it for years and years. So it's like it's not even a new thing.
I would think a tent would actually amplify the effect, just like a grow light. Like it would make it more effective. So like in
I
that
actually
space,
agree with you, Jack. I
it would
Right.
be
completely agree with
ideal.
you. Yeah, because you have a closed space and there's some reflection going on too. Yeah, 100%. And you don't even need it to be on for very long, seconds or
Exactly.
dozens of seconds maybe, and depending on like the frequency. But yeah, you don't want to be on
Minutes
too
per
long.
day, not hours, like or seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. So I just feel like it would, it just,
It's not even a big part of
look
the thing.
into it, guys. Look into it. Find something that'll work for your situation.
But I
I mean,
would say,
Can Row used to use it back in the day, and he had good results. He was fighting powdery mildew with it, and
yeah,
it was effective for him. So
get a portable one. Yep. Clean light.
Like the clean light, I think is what it's called. And he had little UV glasses and gloves and would wear long sleeves
Yeah,
or
that's
whatever.
scary to me. It's nicer to have the light in there and then you just walk out of the room and then turn it
Yeah,
off.
that's how the Dutch do it too. It's like on a greenhouse, it's on a boom. It's just literally sweeps over all the plants. It's over them for a couple seconds each, maybe one or two passes, a couple seconds on each plant. And if people are doing stuff professionally and have been doing it for years and have been having good results with it, I generally tend to think that there's probably something behind it. They're not just spending that money to install those booms and lights and running the electricity for shits and giggles. It's because they saw, well, they also actually had much more stringent pesticide regulations than a lot of other countries.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
what
That's a
that's what
big
spurred
difference
that.
in Europe. There's a lot of things you can't use unless you're growing grain crops, but we don't want to talk about that. But
So,
yeah, it's
hey,
true.
well, you got to keep the world fed, I
But my
guess.
second
Yeah,
invention of
I
tech
guess.
my second invention of tech that I can say at least something that's out that could be purchased now, and it's not popular because it's expensive. They're all freaking expensive. But I really think some kind of a light meter. I myself don't have an actual light meter. I have, well, it is, but I have the Pulse Pro. I got one with like combined with some other environmentals. I really do like that thing, but it definitely did change my grow, being able to not going off of even what the manufacturer said, because who knows if it's exactly the same or not. You'll know if you have a meter, So to be able to not guess on if your light's too strong or not, because for me it was impossible to tell until the plant told you. Now it's not too late, but it's a lot later than if you could have just put a meter underneath it and adjusted it to make sure it was at the right levels.
It's more scientific. Oh, I'm giving 1,000. You can literally say like under here, grow. This is Donnie Burger at 850 ppfd or 1,000 ppfd. I'm seeing people doing 1150 ppfd. Some are doing 700. So 1,000 is like a,
That's pretty high up
a
there.
standard, but some people are pushing a little higher with CO2 and
Right.
modern LEDs and dialing everything in. But um, I mean, some people, the Chandra et al. Study went up all the way to 1,500, and the plants continued to. It was like a marginal increase, right? So it went up like 1,000, and then from 1,000 to 1,500, it was just like a very negligible gain. So that cost you're putting in is not really worth the squeeze. But and the plants are also stressing. Like a lot of plants are certain strains I'm familiar with from doing research about like in 50 strains of purple and 50 strains of green. You do a lot of deep research on these strains, and unfortunately, a lot of them have hermaphrodite prone tendencies, and they'll even write like doesn't like being overfed, doesn't like getting too much light. I'm looking at you, cookies varieties a lot of the time. But yeah, so it's something that has to be considered. And if you can get away with running that, I don't know, 500, 750, 800 range and still get good results, then why push the 900,000 or even 1,000 plus? But I do think if you dial things in, 800, 900, 1,000 is very doable for a plant once you get your environment and nutrients and all that other stuff dialed.
Yeah, I like to tell people about 800 unless you have everything just completely dialed. I wouldn't go much higher than 800. A lot of people, I think, really pound light, and I don't know that it's needed to be pounded that super hard.
I think they're worse off for it in a lot of cases, and I hate to say that.
I mean,
I
do
see the
you
plant
think that
stress.
like this is not meant to sound like super elitist or anything, but I think most people don't understand like some super basic biology about plants, which to their detriment, right? But like
We
imagine like what you said, Jack, the fact that we even have research that shows what like an optimal range could be is super incredible. That way, otherwise, how could you be efficient or sustainable for that matter?
well, and
That's
I'll say
super elitist to say, Vince and all.
You can
No,
say my
but
name.
oh yeah. I don't know.
No, it's
Yeah, I don't
okay. I'm
know.
just teasing.
that's what he knows
But
you
I
as.
agree. I appreciate that, Tao. I appreciate that because I
No.
I was raised perhaps with some southern ideas about how like don't insult people, and I think part of it is like in my mind, I don't think it's. I like to assume that people know before they
Yeah.
like show
I
that's not
taught
always optimal, but I think it's
I
because that way you don't like assume oh this person doesn't know something, right?
well, I usually talk down to people so they can understand me because with my extensive vocabulary, it'd be very difficult for people to comprehend my thoughts if I use the words I want to. But um, I'm just messing.
Well,
I was
you
gonna
let me
say
know how it
something.
works
I
for you. It
forgot
doesn't
now.
work very well for me.
Oh yeah, I remember. I remember. I don't have a. I do actually. I have like an old one, a lumens tester, but I know that too much light from when I lowered the light, the plant got happy because yeah, when I first switched over to LED, I like killed 3 plants pretty much, and then I was like, what the f? And then I'm like, oh, perhaps yeah. People are like, dude, yeah, the it's way more light than you think it is because you don't get the heat with it from an HPS and all of that stuff.
You can't
It
feel it.
is
The hand
just,
test doesn't
I
work
would say,
anymore.
yeah. And I would say that, yeah, that's one of the new technologies, just LED lights. But you know what? Again, and I think GML is on something with the adjustable spectrum, so you can make it an HPS spectrum if you want. So then you can, oh, I guess I don't know how exact it is, but you can get the best of both worlds. Because I do believe, as Noah the grower has stated before, and other people, that certain strains seem to perform and have a better high when grown under HPS, and I think that could be true for sure. But
I totally agree.
Yeah,
if GML does that, then you get the best of both worlds, and I think that's really
Science
cool.
LED, there's a
Yeah,
few spectrum tuning lights out there. So I mean, it's not
Luminaire or something
exclusive to any
before
one
then,
brand.
even, yeah. Like we said,
There's
the Dutch have been playing with it too.
yeah, the grow cropter I told you guys about that like my grow reviewed it was like basically like 4 pucks and it kind of would extend out. You could be like a 3x3, a 4x4, like a 5x5 light. That's kind of an interesting concept, but it could do literally any spectrum. So and it's interesting. I love spectrum tunability, and I would probably set it to. I mean, I made my own spectrum for the LED light that I made, and I pretty much set it up as close to HPS as I could. Heavy in the reds, a little bit of blue, but way more heavy in the red. And so I think it's as close to HPS as I'm gonna get. And LED, I will say, fucking crushes it, man. I love LED lights. Once you figure out, like, I was doing the hand test under CMH, it worked. When I was doing the hand test under LED, you can give way too much light and it'll still feel fine at the canopy. It feels hot if you put your hand right next to the light because those things are fucking blasting, especially if cobs like I do.
Yeah.
But we all think, and we may actually know it, that we can grow dank, or that we want to believe that we like know the plant or we could read the plant. I have been guilty of this myself in the past, but I probably let some plants suffer for longer than they should have because I was giving them a little bit too much light because maybe I dialed my dimmer a little bit too far over. And my eye, what I can perceive as like, a 5 or 10 or whatever percent change, might not have been exactly accurate that day. So having a meter to say, oh, I know this is exactly where it's at, is certainly a fantastic piece of
The
equipment.
light controllers really are helpful for adjusting the dimming of the lights because instead of just eyeballing it by turning the dial, if you it's not picking out any brand, but any light controller, it usually has a display that says, you're at 100%, and then you can go up and down and you can see those percentages fall and you know exactly what percent you are. It's not a guess. It's not a guess on a dial. Oh, where was I on that?
That's my next light. I'm still running Gen 1 LEDs with the manual little I think they were calling them potentiometers back when, because that was the technical actual term for what you're doing. Like I wired some of my fucking LED. And I'm not an electronic like a electrician, and thank you to Kyle Breeder and Ohm's Law who walked me through that process. But that's what I love about growing cannabis is it teaches you so many different things. I never would have. I remember from school series and parallel and a little bit about a circuit as a circle, blah blah blah. It has to be closed, put it in use, all that. And I was actually able to fucking make it work. So like it doesn't have to be something crazy fancy. There's actually now I probably would never do what I did back those years ago because lights were much more expensive when I was trying to get into LED. Like it was more cost prohibitive to get the high end, good efficiency, right spectrum stuff. And now every single brand, if you just don't like buy a blurple, you're pretty much going to find something pretty decent, even at the very, 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 very budget end. Spider Farmer, VivoSun, whoever you can afford. Um, I like HLG. I feel like they're fairly affordable and put out a great product, but Grandmaster LED seems to be doing some good stuff. There's a lot of brands out there that make good lights. I think Brandon had good luck with Fosi or Fos, however it's pronounced. And there's countless great options on the market.
There's a lot of
Geek
great options.
Beast. Yeah. I mean, there's
I
like,
really think the future is having to be able to spectrum tune like what Ty was saying, if you want to give them, and we're not the only spectrum tuning lights either. But so I'm not pushing a brand. I'm just saying that technology. I really think it's it's the future as a grower. It's something else you can play with. It gives you one more control. And a lot of people are thinking things like what Tom's saying. It's like, oh, I can get an HPS spectrum and have that HPS spectrum for flower and but have the efficiency of LED. But that's true, but it's a little short-sighted what you can do with it too, because don't think in terms of I can just change the spectrum once. You can change the spectrum as many times as you want to. So you can do things to crop steer. You can come in real heavy blues the first couple of weeks of flower to slow it down from bolting and get some tighter internode spacings, and then you could go to a heavy, maybe week 3, go to a heavy HPS like spectrum, get some bulking out of the plants, and then last week maybe go to a finishing bulb and bring in heavy blues again and pull out some of the reds. And I mean, there's all kinds of things I'm playing with it. It's fun to be able to change the things. Not there's people taking it further than me. Like GML's taking it to the point where he's changing throughout the day. So have a blue spectrum for a couple
Sunrise,
hours in the
sunsets.
morning, yeah, and then have like an orange
Yeah, it was
spectrum.
really cool to see the research related to that. I feel like intuitively it makes a lot of sense. I think this is one of those examples where somebody who says who does commit like the naturalism bias of like, well, that's how it happens in real life, so it must be better. Not always, but in this actual case, you're stressing out the plants if it's too sudden. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I was gonna say that in my book that I'm writing right now, there's a section where I talk about all the various a list of as many different like IPM techniques and kind of classifications of things you could do. And one of them is like with lights, right? And there's some really interesting like kind of niche uses of lights, and one of them is how like I talked about in my future canvas project presentation for powdery mildew. Fun fact, it seems like yellow light within a certain spectrum, um, I guess it induces a massive reduction of spore germination. I mean, not germination, maybe germination, but also production of the colonies. I thought that was really fascinating. Now, does that mean that there's a practical application IPM? Well, I don't really know, but it's one of those things where if there's research that shows that, it'd be interesting to see where people go with it. And farmers and growers are so creative.
Blast yellow
And
right
I
before you put them to bed, when they're
Yeah,
more
yeah, I
likely.
feel like it would not be hard to test also for a researcher too. So if you're not just a grower, if you're also somebody who can actually test those things, because I'm looking into those things, I don't find a lot of evidence, but it's something to think about. And I think that it's not wild speculation. There's even evidence to kind of purport. So I think
Researchers
that's
also
really cool.
they
Yeah.
often follow the growers, whether it's like fishing or growing. They look at the people that are like doing it in the field, and then they'll start some of their research from them, and vice versa. The growers learn from the researchers, so it's a good back and forth. And I think it's really interesting to see all the people tinkering with the light spectrum stuff. I think one group, I think science is calling them like light recipes, and that idea of giving different spectrums is fun because you can sort of tinker with, if like Spartan, you keep cuts. And so that's something we're going to get into for the finishing out the Mother's Day episode, talking about keeping mothers. But growing it under a different spectrum each time, like you could basically run it like one time all blue just to see like what's it like all blue all the time, and then all yellow all the time, all green all the time, all red all the time. And like you'll have your rainbow grows, like that year you ran the Spartan glue or whatever underneath every different color. And like you could do that with all of your staple and be like, oh, each one, like this one did really well under blue, this one did really well under yellow, etc.
That's what they're doing at the productions. I mean, at the commercial scale, there's people that have with our setup. This is a I'm not going to name the names because I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, but it's in Canada and they have what they call a R&D room. So it's like half the size of the normal flower room, and they're just going to set up one light at this spectrum, one light at this spectrum, one light at this spectrum, and one light at this spectrum, and then the same, like you said, a clone of each one under each one. And then once they find out, oh, we like what it looks like under X whatever one, when they find that spectrum, that's their recipe for that when they run that strain.
Well, and then that becomes the standard for that strain, like how you have your stable, and everything kind of has to be at least that good or better. So like let's say yellow does really good for Donnie Burger. And you're like, okay, yellow is our metric. If we're gonna try a purple or red or even like a blend, like a sunrise, sunset, full spectrum, everything, we're gonna have to test that against the all yellow because the fucking yellow is the new gold standard or whatever. And it's gonna be cool because people will within their facilities have their own data and metrics. I already know one facility here in the desert area. They just sold their grow for big bucks actually. So I don't know the owner anymore, but before it sold, this fucking facility was just cranking it out. Light depth greenhouses with full air conditioning, HVAC, and lights every 4x4. So it
Ooh.
was basically like indoor setup, but taking advantage of the sun in San Diego. And they cranked out some. I've gotten to smoke a bunch of this stuff, and it's pretty fantastic. So the control and even at scale, when people are really passionate, like these two guys were that set the shit up, uh, it's amazing what you can pull off. And I personally think the sun will be the ultimate king fucking light. It's gonna be like, hey, fuck all you grow lights. I'm gonna be the OG. Like, I don't think we're ever gonna get to a point in technology where we're gonna be able to replicate that. So I think mixed light with the sun and like a LED, like a Think Grow LED or Science or
We got to the
the
moon, and you don't think we can replicate the
We got to get on that Dyson Sphere tech. Okay, that's where
we
we're
have
heading.
plasma and they claim that it's like the same, but I don't know. I'm not convinced. It's
about fusion reactions. What about that?
we're
Yeah, well,
we're
I'll just flip on my fusion fission generator
we were
and
like
solve all
a
of our
year
energy
away
problems.
30
These-
years ago. And
I,
so
I hope they put solar
I
panels
saw a really
off of
cool
fusion
system that
reactions
used magnets to keep I want to say it was a fusion or a plasma reaction or
to help it
something.
keep it way more
I guess,
stable. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you saw that too, right? It was going over the
Yep.
internet. But like, I guess the problem is that you can't keep it. It generated a ton of power in that one small period of time. But the problem is that it's just so much power. We don't have a way to like suck it all
harness
down and not damage our like our like uh
equipment.
materials that would do that. Yeah, like the receptors and that kind of stuff, the capacitors. Pretty interesting that that's our bottleneck, just like batteries.
Well, we'll get Elon Musk
Kind
on
of,
that. We tell him we need a big battery that could take a massive amount of energy,
yeah,
like
just a
a
big battery, guys.
gigantic
Yeah.
capacity.
Aren't
He's
they
like, we'll
What's
just
just
wrong
use
with the
the
big battery?
suppressing the fission?
he'll just say, hey, look, there's a giant nuclear reactor in the sky called the sun, and we have solar, and the cost of that is coming down to pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, there we
And
go.
most places, like the solar panels are actually heated at this point. So even if you have snow, it'll literally just like occasionally you hear these loud thumps because the snow builds up like a few inches and it just fucking goes sliding off. But yeah, I mean, it can work even in snowy environments, believe it or not.
I
They have
also want
them.
to recommend people get, yeah, like if you're like into this sort of outdoors life and that kind of thing, or even if you're not, like having like an emergency, it sounds kind of like maybe it's a little too involved, but having like an emergency solar panel system that you can like keep in your car or something with like a battery that will
That's good.
take it is like, I don't know, it could save your life if there was like, I don't know, some kind of like catastrophe where maybe you lost your connection to the GPS.
Cost on those is coming
Something that would
down.
never happen or anything in the middle of a desert. So, just think about that. Think about having power on you, which gives you the power to do things.
There was
Also, those
issues with
scooters are pretty easy to get that are like battery powered. So,
the solar
yeah.
flare or the solar injections that caused all this like northern lights that are happening over these past few days has been messing with a lot of people's GPS and like cell phone connections and stuff like that.
That's
So
right.
it's not, you
People
know,
are saying that's hard.
unthinkable that, something could come along and mess with our electricity at some point. So having our own way to generate it and or use it without
Even if
being
it's just
reliant.
SDG&E who does the interference. But yeah.
They do it all the time. They'll be like, "Hey, we're doing regularly scheduled maintenance, so we're gonna cut your power off for 12 hours," and that's always fun when it's the hottest or coldest day of the year. But enough complaining about SDG&E. It's Mother's Day. We gotta be chipper and cheery. And speaking of all the running different strains under different recipes, Spartan, you have a bunch of different strains. I just want a rundown of what kind of moms are in your stable right now. What's the how many do you have, and what are they?
Oh, geez, man. Well, I'll talk about just my home my home stuff, I keep it pretty low. I whack things left and right, man. They don't.
You're a Spartan kicker. We know that.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
it on
So
one hand? Is it just five? I
yeah,
keep it low. I have
probably.
zero. So you got more
Spartan
than me.
Kicker, that's such a great name.
Yeah.
Just had to interject that.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of mom plants. So like you wouldn't be a big mom plant. My mom plants are in a 1 gallon pot. If they get much bigger than that, they get cut down. If they don't go into the final pot after that, if they don't go into a sip container, they're just gonna get cut down. So I just reset them, cut some clones off of them, make sure they start to root, and then I'll cut down that mom plant that's in a 1 gal. And that's as much as I'll really devote to a mom. I'm not gonna devote a giant pot to a mom. I'm not gonna give it all that. Because eventually I'm probably going to cut it down because I like to have newer, fresher growth. I don't like to have old growth. And so I refresh my genetics with the top. I try to cut from the tops of the moms too, most of the time. So that's how I do it. It's more of like a cycle. So the moms aren't really that old. But I mean, I have all my strains that I'm working with now, but it's probably like I'd have to sit in there and look at them, and I could tell you, I know I have two phenos of Spartan Puke that we picked out of the pheno hunt at the Trichome Forge that we're running in organics to see how each one expresses, and then to make the final decision on which one we're keeping. So I know those for sure. I have Bliss Bud, which is a sour diesel pineapple Thai cross. I have Banana Conda. That's kind of a newer addition to my garden. I got as a cut. So that's supposed to be a good washer. So that was actually I got one hanging in my hanging in my
Fresh
driveway right now.
Coast.
What's that?
Is that from Ross? That Banana Conda?
I don't know. I got mine. I just got a cut, so I'm not sure where the genetics are from.
Fresh Coast, I think is what you were saying.
Recently smoked them when I was in Ohio. It's really good.
Oh, nice, sweet. Because I have it hanging right now, so I'm excited for that.
Banana stuff washes well across the board in my experience, at least like strawberry banana and a few of the other banana strains. Like banana OG washes better than regular OG. So
For whatever it's worth, I've heard the same thing, and I think not from Jack either. So
Nice. See, so my sources are correct. I like it. I got orange dream
consistency.
haze. I've got which is like a jelly bean cross. I got what's the other one I got in there? I'm thinking in my head. Oh, Vortex, of course. Yeah, I've got Vortex as well. And I don't think I have any Vortex crosses right now. I think I cut all them out.
Spartan
for
Puke is a
now.
Vortex cross.
Oh yeah, you're right. I got Spartan Puke. I got two phenos of it. You're
I
right.
got you.
Yeah. And then oh yeah, and then I have in flower, I have a new stuff for me. It's Newberry from DJ Short. And I've got two phenos in flower right now that I'm excited for. So I have those clones in clone form right now. They're still small. I think that's all the strains I've got at home. I might have missed one or two.
I know Red Setter Farm had some Newberry he was looking forward to. I think he got them like from DJ in person at some event or something.
Yeah, he's got
But
two packs of them.
that's awesome. I haven't actually gotten to try that one, and I'm a DJ fan. I will admit I like his work, and this is maybe a sign of respect that it doesn't like come across that way, but I like his work more when it's crossed into other stuff. I think it breeds really well. I also really enjoy his stuff, but I just think that like I like Blue Dream more than I like Blueberry, and that's just my preference. But Flow's really good, and he's got some really good, what I would consider kind of like old school staples at this point. And the one thing about Blueberry is I think that it's a little bit of a sort of powdery mildew attractor. So if Newberry is anything like Blueberry, then it might struggle with that. But maybe the Newberry has fixed some of those issues.
That's all right. I got a light for it. It'll be all
That's right. Not
right.
only the spectrum tuning and potentially to hit them with the yellow at the end, and even in the morning, you could also hit them with that secret, undisclosed Grandmaster.
Name is the Predator, and we have it. It's been done for a long time. We're just waiting for the stupid registration process so we can start selling the stupid things. So it's
It
kind
has
of
to be a
pushing new
different one.
territories. There's not a lot in this market, so we're kind of like having to write our own way through the registration process.
Yeah, I was gonna say from a regulation standpoint, it would have to be different than a typical like 3500 Kelvin white grow light because
Yeah, it's not a
it's
grow light at all. So it's a pesticide. So that's why it's making it's more.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense that it's gonna take a little bit longer to put out. And for those who are listening that might not understand those subtle differences, although it's like, going into like the 200 and 300 nanometer spectrum, which it's technically still a light and it's technically still used for growing, it is doing a different job. Just like I think it was like SF90 or something got banged for they were basically saying you could use it as a pesticide because it was a surfactant or something like that. But it was supposed to be used for something else, like a wedding. I don't know. But there's stuff that comes across like that when you get into pesticide stuff.
Yeah,
They get real
Harley
touchy.
from Neurogenetics told a story about he found out that feeding amino acids, long story short, affected the plants in a way that in silica affected that plants in a way to make it almost like a pesticide, a fungicidal more effect. And because the amino acids chelated calcium and the silica basically made it harder for any of the fungal to pull up water. And but they were on it to tout like all this research he had done to say like how all that worked in better detail than I just did. And but they ran into they said, oh, well, you're saying this is going to protect from bugs, then you got to go through this. So like, so they didn't say anything. They're like, no, this is just an additive for nutrition. They went that way with it. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate that regulations sometimes hamstring the transfer of good information, because just because something is one thing doesn't mean it can't be another thing. Water is great. You can use it to drink. Clean water is fine. You could mix it with a pesticide and spray it. Like fucking you can spray it at high enough speeds to cut steel or diamond, when it's pressurized the right way. So like it's all about the use case and application. And as long as it's not harming people, I don't necessarily understand. But to give, I guess, a little bit of credence to the other side, and Matthew might be more understanding of this, it's good to make sure that everything is actually proven in well documented studies under supervision of people that are, pest experts or entomologists and things like that, who can actually verify, like, oh, we don't just think that this thing helped. We can verify, like, here's a test population and here's the population that didn't get it. That one got eradicated and this one, 70 or 80 or 90 or 100% were saved. And there are products that do things like that. Some of them are very nasty and we don't want to spray them on our cannabis or even our food, ideally, but they're out there. So hopefully you're not spraying them on your mothers, because something about mothers, reminder for those who don't know, if you spray something that is systemic, it will be on your cut and then it'll be on the other cut for a long, 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 long time. So if it goes to be tested anywhere in a legal market, or even if you just have integrity about your own health and your patient's health, if you work with others, be aware of what you're spraying on there.
well, and also I've gotten new information myself hanging out with Marcus, the bubble man, Richardson. He told me that a hash maker, he said a good hash maker is going to notice if you've sprayed anything on your plants. He said, because especially if you're doing fresh frozen, when there's still a little bit more of the plant material of the leaves, he says when you put that in the water and let it, because they let it soak first, to hydrate, it's already hydrated, but to be, just let it soak first. They said you'll see a little sheen, like a rainbow sheen on that's sitting like a layer of that, whatever that pesticide was or whatever that was, on the top of the water as it separates, especially if it's oil. And you notice it, right? You notice it in the hash process. So, and then he even told me, because one of my favorite things, sulfur, wettable sulfur. I'd said something, we were talking, sitting there, and I said I like to use wettable sulfur, and he like, it's like, oh, and I'm like, what's your problem with wettable sulfur? He said, if there's any trichomes on that plant, he said that sulfur will embed into that trichome, and that'll come out in the flavor at the end in your hash or in your concentrate. And I said, no, but like in veg, you don't have any trichomes. He goes, oh yeah. He does macro photos. He's showing me photographs of on a cotyledon, the first true leaf after the cotyledon. There was trichomes on it.
Hundreds of them, they're covered.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that leaf won't be there when you harvest, though.
Some of the ones in veg will, depending on how
Are you
short
sure?
you.
Yeah,
Are
not
you
the
absolute?
second leaf after, not the first leaf after the cotyledon won't be.
Let's say you do a main line
No,
where you
but
top it.
what I'm saying is if you spray sulfur and like your plant is a full grown plant, a veg plant, and you're spraying sulfur in there,
The trichome's already there. Yeah.
Yeah, same thing on like
Yeah.
the
Full.
stalks and stems and everything like
Yeah.
that. The
That's why it's
trichomes are
used for
there.
He
clones
said
and
that it smells
seedlings,
like
right?
matches when he washes
Yeah.
stuff with sulfur or something like that. And it's sulfur is very distinct smelling. So it's one of those things like it's not a pleasant aroma. And hash is so, I mean, it's a very high dollar market, right? Like some of these things are still $100 a gram and maybe even more in some markets. So the best of the best rosin, the full melts, the five, 6 star, whatever. Um, whatever's considered, the 90 bag or whatever it is, the first wash, first pull, first sift. Um, it's a very high value thing. So making sure that's why I think so much of the value goes to the single source guys who grow it themselves, wash it themselves, press it themselves, because they know every step of the process. They can guarantee, oh, well, there was nothing sprayed on this. I haven't, I just have gone away from spraying as like a general IPM thing. Like I'll I have good enough sources that I can get the good bugs to me if I have a pest issue. And I have a few natural sprays on hand that I can hit them with and knock them down with before they get here to try and protect myself. But if I don't have pests, and Matthew's probably gonna cringe to hear this, but I just won't do the sprays. Not even in veg. Like I'll
I'm
just
not cringing. I recommend people not to sort of uselessly spray. It's so super context dependent. Some people, they don't have good cultural or physical controls, or at least, or they live in a place where they just get bugs all the time. Like I don't know what to say. And maybe it's more relevant, but I feel like it's way more efficient to like have like a glue trap and just wait and then maybe do a short regimen and then see where you're at and then modify from there. I think that's better for the environment, better for your pocketbook, and also just better for your plants as well. You don't have to wipe off those waxes and things that can be also resistance factors for things like powdery mildew.
yeah, and I just if I can avoid like if I was in a commercial setting and I had thousands or millions of dollars on the line of crop that are going to be coming down, I would be like Brandon, rotating between Bavaria Bassiana and other natural sprays that I could make work within my system that are affordable if you get them at the right scales and apply them appropriately every so many days. I do see a benefit to that. I think that the IPM being more holistic like that and even being preventative. I think Marone Bio makes some great products from Venerate to other ones that I've seen work for people. And I've used Dr. Zymes myself. I've used Lost Coast Plant Therapy myself and had good results with them, both for active outbreaks and preventatively in greenhouse or outdoor scenarios. And there's a lot of natural local remedies. I think people can, if you talk with your local gardening friends and see what they're using, sometimes a lot of that stuff
Water.
might work.
Don't underestimate just water. That's a great one.
Yeah, high pressure,
Nothing, get
spray it.
nothing else. Cheap from Grow, man. Fill up your sprayer with water and just physically spray the shit out of the fuckers. They will fall off the leaves more than likely.
Yeah, I definitely support like disruptive things like this, especially if they cost like $0 and 0 cents.
Yeah,
And
what's the harm, right? You're
is
foliaring
what,
your
yeah,
plant.
exactly. It's like medicine. It's like, is the risk low and the potential payoff medium to high or even just low? Well, maybe do it, try it out at least. But if the risk, like for example, I wouldn't recommend it if you were like in flower, or like, you get botrytis a lot or something like that, or it's really humid. But if you're out in the desert, and you get some aphids or whatever, like maybe also, I don't know your context. Maybe um it's hard for you to hunt them. Maybe your eyesight is not great, or maybe your dexterity has been impacted by an injury or something. And so you blast them off with the water, and then maybe you follow up with some other stuff too. I would never recommend on one particular thing, but I think it's a valid point to make. And then so often people just reduce IPM to products that you buy at a store, where you can make certain ones potentially, or you can, or at least some sort of disruptive substance or solution like a net or something like that. And also the community is super important. learning something from research, learning something from experience, and then sharing that with other people, like we do every week, is a highly slept on aspect of IPM, the community function as well. There's an environmental section, a community section, and I would say then like a more strategic, or logistical or operational outlook, which I talk about in my book too. So, you know,
Do you have any quick
I think
takes
that that's
on
super.
an old one I remember from a guy? He's called Kingston now. He has a brand gas house, and kind of came up from the old school system. But there was a Weed Kit at a episode on YouTube long ago where he was wearing like an afro to disguise his identity and like bandana and all that stuff. One of the things he talked about using was skim milk and cayenne pepper as a IPM spray. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that one as a from the culture. And I have thoughts on both of those things independently, and I also feel like there's something kind of related to the skim milk, but I'm curious if you have some specific thoughts to that, and then we could talk about other stuff related to it.
I've actually read research that's looked into it, right? And apparently it was helpful for some powdery mildews on some plants. It wasn't cannabis though. It was some other plants. It might have been multiple different plants, but if I remember right, it was
Talking about
or at
milk.
least I think they looked at the mechanism of action, and I think that although it was actually one of the more effective things. I think there was an array of different products, and then one of them was like milk. Might have even been like different milks, like one that was like you said, Jack, maybe skim milk or something
That
else.
was
But I guess
specifically what was referenced in this thing. He said skim milk and cayenne pepper,
I've
and
personally used milk
oh
to
no, but in the
powder
research,
milk.
I mean, sorry, like to back it up. But I think the mechanism of action was either the bacteria in the milk or at least just the nature of the milk was like a huge pH shift, which was untenable for the mildew, I think is how it's supposed to work. So if you have something that does that, you might not want to use like milk that could rot on your plants, for example. But so that's why it's
Just do
important to
like a
do the
rinse
research,
afterwards.
right? Maybe milk's all you got, but maybe you might have another opportunity or option.
I've used milk before. I mean, it's not a dead cure all, but it has worked before for me with powdery mildew specifically outdoor. And I think when I was researching it, that they had tracked it down to the lactobacillus somehow out competing or somehow the powdery mildew. I'm not sure exactly the mode of action, but maybe the pH. That sounds like it makes a lot of sense too. That pH of that milk's gonna be way off, so that might also help.
that's what my mind was going to go to is like the labs,
Yeah.
that's really commonly used across the cannabis community, but with what I would say is fairly successful results. And so I think independently, both those things could possibly work. And it's depending on like what you're fighting, right? It's not like you're just going to go and spray that just because for the fuck
Well,
of
I
it. I
saw
think
it. I saw a YouTube clip of this. It appeared to be a very good grower in Northern California, and he at the end of or at some point in flowering, he would water his plants with milk. One time, literally watering the plants with fucking straight milk. So, and his plants looked awesome. So, I don't know if it helped or hurt, but it didn't hurt, I guess. And yeah, that's what I was going to go back to the medical thing. Yeah, do no harm first. Whatever you're going to do to your plants, make sure you do no harm, and then go from there. That's my motto, anyway.
I think it's a good place to start from. I think that's a great point. Um, and I think, like I've said this a lot, but I feel like it bears repeating that there's a huge importance for like low input, low tech, not necessarily high tech, or I love the fusion of high tech and low tech, right? Um, and the fusion of our knowledge, like so research backing why, certain uh, you know, millennia aged techniques work, and then finding ways to like make them more efficient even. I love that kind of stuff, and I think it allows growers to have way more options. And also it's of course that rotation of options that allows you to guide the symbiosis between the plants and the pests and the good guys too in a way that's best for you, because there is a symbiosis even with the pests that we have
the
to learn and then kind of modify or mitigate.
I like the one comment from Traptor X who said that lacto is an acid. Let's not forget, and being acidic, that definitely will play into that whole pH thing. And so, good comment there. And I think that the cayenne pepper, or any pepper really, spray is kind of acting in a similar way that the peppers are growing in nature to be sort of less attractive to certain pests. I usually think I see that recommended for spider mites, but I could be wrong. I think it's usually for like the soft-bodied insects. And if you're going to do any sort of cayenne pepper spray, be very, very careful when you're spraying it. You might want to goggle up or wear a respirator or some sort of like thorough masking, and be very careful not to be inhaling that or spraying it with fans on around you. Because if that gets into your eyes, your nose, your ears, even, or if you have a small cut, scrape your fingertips, nails, if you pick any, that stuff, glove up and wear full long sleeve everything to be careful because it's not worth stinging all parts of your eyes, nose, everything. It's not a fun experience
The
as
inside
somebody who's
of
been
your
on the wrong end of the hot
lungs, your
sauce.
throats, like the really, you got to hit them in the emotional zones, you know, like it's gonna feel like you breathed a pepper in and not ate one.
As
It's
somebody
not
who's been
very
around
fun.
pepper spray that exploded a container,
Oh
some of the
boy.
strongest legally attainable pepper spray, I can tell you that capsaicinoids are certainly effective at causing pain and swelling and very much, shutting down your ability to see, smell, or taste and experience extreme pain in your lungs, mouth, nose, throat. All that shit is rough. So be careful with that
Yeah,
shit.
if you were wondering if it was just your tongue and your gut that can be like, oh, this is a spicy thing. This is heat. Your lungs do too, and you'll find out. I want to also say that like fun fact, because I'm working on the video, it happens to be on my mind. But since we're talking about like the milk and the pH, these caterpillars, these budworms that people are dealing with in cannabis, and other caterpillars are a lot like this too. There's a section in the video where I'm talking about like, well, why the capabilities work in a succinct and I feel like a elegant way. But one of the things is that they have like a pH of like 12, their gut. So that like right there, like toxins and acids and proteins and enzymes that plants produce as a defense, they just get neutralized straight up. Like they ingest them, and then like those secretions just like dissolve essentially. And that's a really great way to not be affected by some of the things we were just kind of talking about. So, like, I guess it's important to know that there's always going to be something, and even some bacteria that caterpillars in general, but budworms in particular. I was just reading a report. They'll recruit the microbes on the plant, and then those will actually help the caterpillar rather than the plant. And then sometimes you get the
Damn.
reverse, right? Like Bouveria. But yeah.
Gotta love the chaotic symbiosis slash potentially you know not so symbiotic relationships going on at the microbial levels, which is kind of crazy. Even I think it reminds me a little bit of a similar reason. Another old school home gardening tip a lot of people like to break out is using the baking soda. And I think
Oh,
the
yeah.
pH changing of baking soda is another reason it could prevent certain molds and mildews and also make caterpillars very unhappy if they're, what you said, 12 pH. So if they're coming in at something
Yeah,
like
12, like super basic, super alkaline.
so
Yeah.
high
So
alkaline,
we have an acidic stomach. Acids is the opposite.
yeah, and like lemon or citrus and other things like that could also be effective in that regard. So it's interesting. This is what I really am, I gravitate to your channel and others like it because when you know like the method of action, how it works, exactly like what messes up these caterpillars, like you can hit them with multiple different products with similar modes of action, or you could start hitting them with different modes of action. Like there's more than one way to take them out. They can mess up their mobility, their ability to have good gut health. Like there's so many ways to screw them up, and nature has provided so many little evil tools in the tool belt to take out the bad bugs with our good bugs and sprays and little things like that that are harmless or
It's super empowering. I
yeah.
really, yeah, and imagine it's also empowering in a different way. Not only is it more sustainable and biological and these sorts of things, but also, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't feel like you had to buy like a $500 or like $100 like boutique or novel or somehow like buy this product when you could buy a cheaper version that's just as good or perhaps even better or purer culture of a microbe or something else. Like, yeah, is the plant microbiome going to help the plant? Of course, but you don't have your microbe goggles on. You don't know what's on your plant. But if you can seed the microbiome and sort of guide that, I think that's way better. And if you don't have to buy an expensive thing, even better, right? So very
Yeah,
cheap home and grow.
that's right. And with that said, it is the 5:45 hour here on the West Coast. I want to give a cheers to Anything Grows. I saw her walking around in the background. Not sure if she's still around, but
Yeah,
letting
she's good
Spartan
living
hang
now.
out. So I'm gonna pass it over to Spartan because I know in about 15 minutes he's got to get going to Michigan Bros Grow Show. But that's been a good one.
Yeah, it's thanks, Jack. I just want to shout out all the moms out there. Happy Mother's Day. That includes my mom, Mama Spartan, and Anything Grows. Shout out to you. Yep, I'm hanging out with her and giving her a break from the kids so she can get some relaxing. So that's my gift to her. I can do that. Just give her some time. But yeah, I'm just gonna say much love, everybody, and keep on growing.
Always great having you, Spartan, and definitely shout out to all the mothers out there, plants and people, keeping the world going around, rocking and amazing. So much appreciate all of them, and much appreciate Spartan every week. But yeah, we were talking a little bit of pests and interrupting their cycles, and that's a great way to keep your mother plants happy is keep the bugs off and away, and same with the molds and mildews. Even something we haven't touched on a little is pathogens. I think making sure that your scissors, snips. I was talking about at the top of the show, cleaning your tools, whether it's something that you are using like a medical device or smoking implement, or even your scissors that you're using for cuts to try and prevent the ever so present one. I think a lot of people think about is the hop latent viroid, but there's more than just that. There's cannabis cryptic virus, tobacco mosaic viruses, tomato viruses, and all sorts of other things that
Yeah.
cannabis can contract and impact the performance of that genetic that maybe you're like, oh man, that strain sucked, but maybe you didn't get a clean cut. So I think it's cool that there's at least the option for people to get tissue culture done and try and get it cleaned up and like hot cold treatments, things like that to try and kill off some of the pathogens and get it as clean as possible, get the freshest meristem or whatever, newest cells and least impacted. So never give up. That's another great. My brother and I was talking about this unrelated to plants, but it's a great lesson that can be applied to plants and mothers. Like Chem 91 is still out there and it still fucking kicks ass. It's been around since 1991. That strain is fire, and people through dedication and hard work have kept it alive and amazing.
Mike gave me that
Al-
Chem D cut. He sent it to me. I've got it in my library.
Chem D is fucking super potent and super fire. I like the flavor too. It's the backbone of the GMO, I think, right? So that's some funky. I just love all the chems. Chem 4, Chem D, Chem 91. They're all special. All mothers at this point, because they're mother plants somewhere, passing off cuts. And so many people at this point hold them, which is a great thing because it's not, if one person goes down or one person's garden goes down for one reason or another, there's lots of copies backed up all over the world now. And there's like professional clone nurseries and stuff that have gotten access to some of these genetics. And if you're fortunate enough to live in legal territories, you might just be able to go to the shop and buy one from a reputable nursery. And it might even have testing that says, hey, this has no hot latent viroid and assurances like that. There's a couple here in California that do that. So it's pretty cool that it is a option that exists. And I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for this community. It's really uh, we're all standing on the shoulders of everybody who came before us, right? But a lot of us are still here. A lot of us are still doing it, and I'm just amazed to see how much progress we've made, but at the same time, how strains from 1991 can still be fucking killer. Like, I don't think that we've. It's kind of crazy to think that there's like a bell curve, at least in the terms of potency. Um, I feel like Chem 91, like in like the 70s and 80s, so like we got to like 1990, 91, it like hit that top, and now we've maybe been going down a little bit. Downy Burger, I think, is up there. I still think Chem
Potency
91 is a
doesn't
little more potent.
necessarily equate to effect either. You know what I mean? Potency and
True,
effect are
true.
are two categoristically different things when it comes to this cannabis plant. So regardless of whether or not you have a higher percentage of THC, doesn't necessarily mean.
Well, and that's not even what I'm testing off of. I'm just saying like the raw, like when you smoke it, like this is an 11 out of 10 in a world where I'll never give a 10,
Yeah.
like very rarely.
I
Um,
feel like it's hard to believe that I mean, I don't think I'm the kind of person who, if you gave me something that was older or whatever, I'm not going to be like, oh, I just can't do this. This is just not up to stand. You know what I mean? I really don't think I'll even get to that point ever in my life, but yeah, so it's nice. It's definitely not a detriment.
Well, and I'm happy that there's stuff that's like, and there's different types of potency. Like some people can't handle sativa. So if I gave you something like Nigerian or Congolese or, somewhere from Durban, it's going to send people into it might not even be like quote unquote potent. It's just a high that they don't like. It's a experience, an effect that they don't enjoy. I love THCV. I love terpinolene. I love pinene. I love limonene. I love those uppity fucking super. I know Brandon's a big fan of those as well. But my wife is more of an indica person. She likes the heavier,
My whole
effects.
tent is like nothing but sours. I've got two different. I've got a
I
Limarilla
love me
Breeder.
some
I've
sours.
got Sour OG. I've got a Limarilla F1. I have
Sour OG is
Cam,
so fire. One of my favorites.
and then every single one of those plants, I think, probably has either pinene or terpinolene in them. And then both my blueberry train mac cuts that I have in there both have terpinolene in them.
I'll say I also like gas. I love pinene, but I like a gassy undertone. The one I'm smoking right now is Velvet Punch F3, and it's over a year old, and it's still fucking amazing, dude. Like if you keep it in temperature controlled, out of the light, it's lost a little bit of the purple. It's definitely like a lighter shade of purple. It was way darker purple and more vibrant earlier, but now it's just like a little bit paler purple. But it still tastes amazing and smokes amazing. Sometimes I think even smoother after a real long cure like that. But the pine comes out way later in the cure on this one. Like it's totally gassed out in the beginning by like fuel, grape, like leather, like floral, other notes. Um, but it's definitely got some pine and like more of like a woody pine than like a sweet pine, like the actual like wood versus like the pine needle and things like that, which is interesting that like cannabis can produce so many different fucking aromas. I've had, and I have seeds of it, one called pine tar, which actually smells like fucking pine tar, which is definitely different than pine. It's a heavier smell for sure. And I'm excited to grow that. Shout out to CSI Humboldt. That's one I've recommended to people and never had somebody come to me and be like, oh man, I regret my CSI Humboldt purchase. They hook up the freebies so fat and so specific. Like you'll get somebody said they even feel bad calling them freebies because they just give you full on packs. So like I bought like a 10 pack or something. I got like a 5 pack of the same strain. Or I might have bought a 20 pack. I don't even remember. But they hooked it up super fat and uh grown a couple of their strains out and it's super fucking fire. So shout out to them and Good Genetics still kicking around. They're old school, speaking of old school stuff, but we were talking a little bit about kind of high potency and like different highs, sativas versus indicas, but just like I'd put chem up there towards the top of my list as Donny Burger would be like a close second. I'm curious, Tao, what's top of your list and your long span of strains you've tried and years of growing and all the memories of you were in New York probably around the era that sour diesel was a big thing, right? So you've got lots of reference points.
Yeah, well, I was kind of a loner because I didn't want to do jail time, so I kept to myself pretty much for the many years. But one of the best ones I grew outdoors was that blueberry. It was DJ Short blueberry, and I never got pyry mildew back where I used to grow it, but I would get botrytis quite often. And that particular plant didn't get botrytis. It might be PM prone, but it definitely is not botrytis prone because leaves of a different plant fell on top of a bud of that blueberry plant that was fell off because they died of botrytis. And when I pulled it off the plant, the blueberry was unaffected. Whether or not it was a luck of the draw, the cut that I had, but it was. And then when I took that shit down and had it at my house, that shit I
I
went back
could
to
be
that
just
one
high
all
and
the time.
misremembering. I probably just flip. To me, I think of those two in very similar categories, although they're very different. I think of them as like late flower or like post crop issues that you might deal with in growing cannabis. So there's a very good likelihood that I fucking flip
You
flop
can
them.
get both at the same time too. That's definitely
Yeah,
Confuse people before. Yeah, for sure. I've been confused before, not by those two together because they do look kind of different and they tend to be on
Yeah,
different tissues. But
yeah.
I mean, even with
Botrytis
bud
can be
rot,
white
like,
though, right? It
well,
can
sure.
express.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, if we're being totally honest, in some plants, botrytis is more commonly, or to some degree, more commonly, a foliar or even a root pathogen because it's a necrotroph. It doesn't really care. There just tends to be a predominance and proclivity for reproductive tissues. But I mean, I try to get out of the habit of calling it botrytis bud rot because there's all kinds of bud rot pathogens, actually. So it's kind of a misnomer to even sort of think in that way. But even I have gotten used to saying it so much that it's still in my vernacular. You know what I mean? So,
I think it's because it's
um,
So
common though. It's
it's
around
not
enough where there's
specific.
smoke, there's fire, right?
It's not
well,
specific
botrytis
like
is so
one for
common. It's also
cannabis.
the most common one. So it's not like altogether, it's just a little bit imprecise rather than being wrong,
And
Right.
I know that
which
you
only
like your
somebody
specificity.
persnickety like me will care about, right? So,
Nothing wrong with that. At least you
But
clarified it. It's
anyway,
just for yeah. Go ahead, Tal.
no, I was just gonna get to the now that I remember that, like I never had the UK cheese cut. I probably could have got it if I really asked wanted it, but every time any weed came around that was supposedly either UK cheese or UK cheese cross, I always loved smoking on that shit, and that's partly why I use that cheesequake mail. And it hasn't. I still love it every day. But those two are the only ones that really stick out. I had someone gave me something that they called the Shiva Skunk, and it was a cut. I forget who it was. It was a long, long ass time ago before anybody was selling cuts. I don't even know how I got it, but that shit was legit too. It had a funk smell and it fucking got me stoned really good. But yeah, like I was saying, I was on the East Coast where New York just became legal a couple years back. So I didn't have access to all the clones and all the strains that everybody in California had, which was probably a good thing and a bad thing. Uh, but yeah, the Chem Dog, anything that I had samples of with the Chem Dog, the Chem Dog 91, all that shit I liked. But like, yeah, like I mean, I didn't have it. I only got it recently, tasted it recently, like in the past 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years. Um, and I tell the story, man. When I went to California that first time, the XJ13, smoked the joint of that, man, and I couldn't stop smiling. I had the permagrin like I did acid for a long time. It wasn't just for like a short fucking 15-minute high. I was there for a while. I'm like, wow,
Hours,
man, that
yeah.
was some good fucking weed.
That's why I like Jack and Jack Crosses, man. It's a happy weed. Who fucking hates being permagran? It's like one of the best reasons to smoke weed, I think, is like just makes you feel
And
good.
yeah, I think more Americans need it every day, especially the way the world is now.
Yeah, there can be
I
sad
need
times,
it.
sad places, but Brandon, do you have a high watermark for the most potent cannabis strain that you've tried? It could
Um,
be indica, sativa, whatever, but just like what kind of rung
Sativa.
your bell harder than anything?
Uh, I distinctly remember some varieties. One of them being the skunk one blueberry, being one of those things that I was completely worthless after I smoked it. Like I just couldn't function properly. Definitely wouldn't want to drive on that weed. Um, but I couldn't do anything properly. But when I was smoked that weed,
Yeah, potent is different than my favorite, Jack. Yeah, there was
Yeah,
potent
no,
ones.
no.
I
I
had
was
Ash
just
Plant
I'm
by
talking like top like wrecks you,
I would
fucking
say
Ash
knocks
for
you.
Plant
me,
by
it's
White
really
Widow. I
hard,
threw out.
super hard to gauge. I don't even know what that would be, to be honest. As
Banana
flour,
split,
I'm not sure.
banana split disoriented me probably as much as the chem. It wasn't like as I just I hate to like talk shit on that strain, but like banana split almost made me feel dumber. Like I couldn't think well under that strain, and like it was potent in that way that it made me like less functional. Like it really couch locked me, and like I couldn't think, couldn't do anything. But in terms of like that kind of like rush, that like head rush, and like overall like feeling of like fucking tingling all through your body, and like just like undeniable like potency of like if you smoke this, you know you're fucking really high. It's not like oh maybe I'm a little high or like I'm feeling it kind of. It's like yeah, fucking super. Like my buddy is a San Diegan, my old barber. He said P91 was pretty high up there for him before he tried my spiked punch that I grew. It got him so fucking high. He was like, he couldn't cut my hair. If we were sitting 2, 3 hours, he's like, dude, I shouldn't have smoked before. Like, he's normally fine. He's fucking lifelong smoker. He smoked this shit and he was so out of it. He couldn't fucking cut my hair. So certain stuff definitely hits certain people differently. And
Yeah,
yeah,
dude. Let me say, the shit that got me most high, I would say, I grew out the shit called OG Kush by Chem Dog D. It was knockoff seed from wherever, but I grew that shit out. It hit me fucking hard. And uh, that Romberry plant that I talk about that I made seeds with, that thing, it didn't get me stupid, man. It got me high in a way that's fucking. I was like, it was. I would, yeah, I guess maybe dumber. I was like confused for a couple of seconds, man. Like, what the fuck is going
Romulan is
on?
named because it's like it feels like you're a fucking Romulan character from Star Trek or whatever, where they had like the dent in their head. It's like so
I'll
fucking
tell you
potent.
what, man. It was so a different high that I'm like, man, I gotta fucking make some seeds with this shit because that's what I'm into. I get bored easily, and like, yeah, that's why I like starting new seeds all the time when I can, is because I get bored easy. Tolerance builds up, it seems, but and that's another good indication of really good smoke, in my opinion, is shit that if you're hitting it, you're gonna be stoned no matter what. Even if you smoked 3 joints before, if you smoke it now, you're gonna feel it. And if you didn't smoke at all, you know.
Yeah, like that first hit while you've been smoking a whole bunch of other stuff, you're still like, holy shit, that elevated or changed my high, gave me that head change. And it's rare, I think, for a lot of stuff because it's like flower versus flower. Like there's only so many percentage. It can only be so much better, right?
Build a
But
tolerance.
yeah, tolerance, but
That's
also
why I
is terp
think,
profile,
yeah,
all the other
different
stuff.
terps are important because that you
Esters,
build a
aldehydes,
tolerance.
ketones. I think the OGs and stuff
Get
like
the different mix up all the
I'm
time.
so attracted to gassy stuff, and we're gonna let it run a few minutes long. We'll do the sign outs here in just a few minutes if you guys are chilling. We're just having a good conversation, so we'll shut it down. We don't want to go cut too far into the Michigan Bros Grow Show, but I do believe that having a good profile can stand out. And like this Black African Magic that I get from my wife's company she's working with, the Bohemian Chemist, like second generation farms from NorCal, growing up in Mendo, just absolutely fucking fire. You can smell it from 30 feet away. And before you even smoke it, just smelling it, like I start smiling. The second I hit it the first time, I'm like, holy shit. Like it sells out so fucking fast. Everybody who smokes it loves it. Like I haven't found, unless you don't like uppity kind of sativa, but like everybody who, because it's well labeled and distributed, people know what they're getting. Um, it's very, very, very well received. So it's just like some stuff is uh, definitely really special. Brandon, do you have any, one of the reasons I want to run it longer, do you have any experience with the P91? Because I know that is a San Diego one. I know you were into the Bull Rider crew, and P91 was huge here, and that was like the OG before OG in San Diego. So do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, I mean it was good weed. There wasn't a lot of like super good varieties back then too, though. You know what I mean? There was a lot more
Going
select
up against
stuff.
Mexican dirt, and you know,
So when you got something that was really good, people grew it. I don't have a lot of experience with it. I only grew it out a couple of times.
that's fair. And I think that what you said is valid. And I want to go back to this a second to what Tao was talking about is the cheese. Shout out to the Exodus crew in the UK. I mean, they still run that shit. And it's some people are like, oh, I can't smoke it anymore because it's been running for so long here. But a lot of people like myself, I tried it and rung my bell when well, not the exact cut, but like it, the lineage kind of pushes through. It went from Cheesequake to Tao's Amy Aces, and I could still taste hardcore cheese. That was a dominant smell in the profile 2 generations later. So the breeding work that they did on that, and then Tao's selections and continuation forward made it really special. And so that is a really awesome feat in breeding, and I'm happy that it's still in the community and people have access to it. If you don't go to amyaces.com, the last thing I'll say before we get into shout outs is something we kind of touched on is knowing all the different good chemicals. So you can avoid stuff that like I grew up around, like fucking Raid. I hate that stuff, nasty chemicals. And although I haven't had any issues yet, I think if you use that stuff lifelong, it's probably not going to be the best for you. Just my general thoughts based on the smell and what it does to all the pests it interacts with. I'd rather go with the kind of more gentler, naturaler routes, good bugs and natural sprays and things like that. Just my 2 cents. But yeah, with that being said, I'm going to pass it first to our resident IPM specialist and great person, Matthew Gates.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I thought this was a really good conversation. I say that all the time, but I think that I liked the structure. I liked the things that we talked about, and we kept it cheap, home, and grow, which is always nice. And it was nice. I liked your tech. I liked everyone's tech examples that they gave. I definitely think that people should. I mean, this is not the time that people are resetting, I think, typically, but it's a great time to consider your options because cool stuff is coming out all the time. You got to know what's good and what's not. And you can check me out at zentinel.com for inquiries of a professional nature. You can also check me out Zenthanol on my YouTube and also on Instagram and Twitter or X at Sync Angel, sync like synchronize. And also my Patreon is gaining more and more traction. So if you want a back into your pocket IPM specialist for $1 a month, check out my Patreon, which is also Zenthanol. Have a good one.
I can at least secondhand say it's been really helpful for a few of the gardeners that I work with who've signed up and got access and got help and fixed their problem. So, I mean, what better feedback can you get than that? You had a problem and they had a problem and you helped them solve it. So, great stuff. And I think it's valuable preventative, like just like you would use the sprays if you have the ability to afford spraying it. Knowing that knowledge in between having your issues is always great to have in your back pocket. So thank you so much for joining us. And next we got Brandon Rust.
Yeah, say it was good to be here. I'll see you guys all next week. In the meantime, if anybody, like I said, that sale is going on, 20% off on Bokashi Earthworks website, and yeah, you can check me out on IG too. What's up, Brandon?
Great having you and happy to have you back. I missed last week too. I just gotten off an airplane and I was like still getting back to my car. So I just got the show live for everybody and wasn't able to get back on with you all. But I was really happy to be back with everybody this week. And last and certainly not least of my panelists this evening is the American one.
Jack, as usual, thanks for hosting. It's always good to be here every week when I can make it. And shout out to everyone in chat. Shout out to C Person One, Collective Mary Jane, Marijuana, and Sacred Terror now for their generosity in the past, hooking me up with stuff. And shout out to everyone in chat, man. We love having you, and thanks for hanging with us. And we'll catch you all next week.
Really so many great people. I could sit here all day shouting everybody out. There's so many good ones. Tal, you did a great job, and everybody here on the panel. I appreciate you all. Appreciate the live listeners here on the YouTube. We really do have a great community. Supportive, knowledgeable, uh, always sort of seeking facts and new research and what are the most efficient, cost-effective ways to grow cannabis because I think we all sort of have the heart of wanting to grow enough for ourselves and then enough to share. Because one of the most special things about the cheap home grow community is being able to grow enough to have more than enough for yourself and be able to share it either for free or very cheaply to others who don't have access to that. Because that's a very special thing to a lot of people. This is very special medicine. It is a very special, even if you just use it as an adult use or what some used to call recreational. It is a special plant and a special community, and I'm so thankful to always be a tiny little part of it. And this show has been something that I've greatly enjoyed doing every week and don't mind running 7 minutes a little over on because it's so much fun hanging with this group every week. And it was really nice just having a few grow specific topics. And we got a little off topic there for a little bit, but we always, somebody pulls us back. And this week it was Matthew. Usually I try to be that guy. But yeah, it's always a good time. And I've been at Jack Greenstock. You can find me at Jack Greenstock on Instagram, Jack_Greenstock on X. It's also my backup account on Instagram. If you want to, I've only got one box of books left of the second edition of 50 Strands of Green. Those are selling. And so if you haven't gotten a copy, make sure to get it before they sell out. Still finishing up Purple. So 50 Strands of Purple will be coming soon. And I still have 3 packs, 5 packs, and 10 packs on sale, 24% off if you're looking for the Velvet Punch F3. I did a interview with guys from High on Homegrown and I was smoking my own homegrown. So shout out to them. And I gave probably my longest description of exactly everything I know about Velvet Punch and the whole process and had a really good time hanging out with Mackie and Monkey over there. Shout out to everybody at Percy's Grow Room and shout out to everybody here. Thanks everybody again, and I'll catch y'all next week. Grows love.